welcome to this February meeting of the Council. I'd like to take this opportunity to say how lovely it is to see Councillor Wendy Turner back in the committee hall, in the chamber. So may I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. The toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it is safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones and turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this room, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Finally, can members and officers please ensure that you press the microphone for speaking and turn it off when you're finished? And can I move to the agenda, please? So, item number 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies from Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest by councillors. In accordance with delegated authority, the monitoring officer has granted dispensations to all members in respect of the 2021 budget papers. Do we have any other declarations? Councillor Brewster.
Madam Chair, yes, I declare a non-pecuniary interest on the Gateway 14 item as the Chair of the holding company.
Councillor Stringer?
Yeah, I just thought, being a citizen of Mid Suffolk, technically with a loan of last resort for the CIFCO, so I need to declare that interest.
In the same regards, I would also like to declare your interest, please.
Councillor Whitehead.
Sorry, in a non-similar way, I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest, local interest, as the Director of Gateway 14.
I don't want to declare an interest, but I'm sorry that I cannot hear. I didn't hear either Councillor Brewster or Councillor Whitehead because they were not facing the mic when they spoke. So could I just remind people that you speak to the mic, not to the chair?
Councillor Geek, did you have a...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm also a citizen of Mid Suffolk, so I'd like to declare an interest as well. Thank you.
So moving on, item number 3, MC/19/35, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 23rd of January 2020 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Councillor Mansell.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the bit. I think it's on page 17. It's a bit awkward when I don't have bits of paper to find the right thing. Is it page 17? Yeah. Page 17, I asked a question about the proportion of people with the proportion of claimants, and there was an answer, and I did reiterate that it was the proportion that I was talking about, not the number, but in the minutes it only refers to the number of claimants, not a proportion.
Okay, we'll get that seen too. Thank you very much. Could I have a proposal? Sorry, Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. Yeah, I could be mistaken, but at the top of page 15, we find an answer to Councillor Mellon's question about Gateway 14 energy, etc. I've got a feeling that was probably Councillor Fleming that answered that question. I could be wrong.
David, that's £10 for Homestart, I think. Could I have a proposer for the minutes, please? Okay. Thank you. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor.
Second, Madam Chairman.
All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed. Item number 4, Chairman's announcements. I refer you to paper MC 19/36 to be noted. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. At this point, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor John Matheson for organising the ZPod meeting that was held here on the 7th of February, where there was standing room only in the Elizabeth Room, looking at sustainable housing. So I'd like to put that thanks on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, Leaders' Announcements. I would like to invite Councillor Morley to present her update.
Thank you, Chair. Equality and diversity. I did mention this last month. Please can I urge all members that have not already done so to attend the mandatory equality and diversity training. So far we've run 8 separate sessions. These have run both during the day and the early evening, and there are still 9 Mid Suffolk councillors who have not attended. Please rectify the situation. Needham Market Station. I'm delighted to inform you that the application for funding for the Needham Access Project has been awarded £380,000 from the Department for Transport. This was announced yesterday. And while this doesn't automatically mean the project is ready for delivery, we do need to do further feasibility and continue on the SIL funding process. It is a huge step forward and demonstrates that the strong partnerships we have in place with Greater Anglia and others are working. I'm delighted that following the Council's commitment to work towards the Unison End Violence at Work Charter, we have now received confirmation that we have met the standard required for each of the 10 criteria. As a consequence, we can now become signatories to the Charter. Unison is holding its National Community Conference next week and will announce our achievement along with other employees who have also gained this Charter status. Achieving this Charter is an important validation of the commitment the Council has to its staff and the effort it makes to ensure that they are protected from the risk of violence or aggression whilst they go about their work. I would like to thank the team that carried out this work, and I am advised that the submission was noted as a very high standard by Unison. The next meeting of the Suffolk Public Sector Leaders is tomorrow. All councillors are of course welcome to attend the meeting, which starts at 10:30 at East Suffolk House in Melton. There are 3 items on the agenda that I want to mention tonight, and these are: we are anticipating that funding will be approved for the second year of support for £50,000 to address NEETs. That's young people not in education, employment or training, which we deliver through the mix in Stowmarket. We are putting forward proposals for how we will spend £250,000 of pooled business rates to help develop the innovation cluster on Gateway 14. And a proposal to create a new 2-year Suffolk Housing Coordinator post who will be employed by Mid Suffolk and Baber on behalf of the wider Suffolk system. I'm happy to share the paper and PowerPoint presentation setting out the details with councillors if it is supported by Suffolk Public Sector Leaders tomorrow. Planning officers for Baber and Mid Suffolk District Councils are in the running for a national award, having paved the way for technological advances as part of the 21st century planning. The development management team, which looks after planning matters for both councils, is shortlisted in the Best Use of Digital and Technology category at the annual IEASY Public Sector Transformation Awards 2020. This category recognises the innovation use of digital tools and technology in order to improve services for residents. Judges were impressed by how the team had streamlined the planning application process for residents across the districts, bringing teams and systems together in order to become one of the top performing authorities for timely planning decisions. The team has also introduced electronic case management and a mobile app in order to put vital information at the fingertips of officers and the public. With public searches of information leaping from 600,000 in 2017 to 1.3 million in 2018. And although not yet in use, they have started to pave the way for future technological advances, such as the use of drones and augmented reality as part of the 21st century planning process. The team must now wait until the awards ceremony in London on next Wednesday, to find out if they have managed to fend off stiff competition from the category's other shortlisted finalists, which are Cumbria County Council and East Ayrshire Council. And the ceremony will be live streamed from 6 o'clock for anyone wishing to follow online. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Morley? Councillor Carter.
Yes, could the Chair please reassure me that we will not have any further last-minute changes to any agendas or to the format of the meetings? Such changes do have a rather detrimental effect on the way how I can proceed, as my nerves do implement me from actually being able to answer questions or speak. So can I make sure that there's no last-minute changes to any meetings, please?
Okay. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. Members may be aware that Manor Farm Doctor's Surgery in Bacton in my ward has been closed this week for deep cleaning after a patient reported a suspected case of a novel coronavirus. Can the leader reassure me that since an outbreak of this virus, whether it comes sooner or later, is going to have significant impact on the work of the council, can she reassure me that the administration has plans in place so that services continue to be provided to the public? Thank you.
Yes, I can, and if you're concerned, we can arrange a further briefing.
Are there any other questions for Councillor Morley? So we'll move on to item number 6, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Item number 7, questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Item number 8, questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules. I refer you to the questions by councillors in the table papers. So question number 1 is to Councillor Eburn to Councillor Morley.
Thank you very much, Chair. The cost of member allowances and expenses has increased from £269,393.13 in 2017-18 to £442,563.39, which is a difference of £173,170.26. Please could you provide the explanation for this increase? Thank you.
There was a one-off increase in the member allowances in 18-19 due to the back payment of the basic allowance and special responsibility allowances that was made following a review of the members' remuneration scheme carried out by the Independent Remuneration Panel. This panel was tasked with looking at members' allowances and to take into account the changes to members' roles following the creation of the leader cabinet model, which was constituted in May 2017. The new scheme was adopted by Full Council in June 2018. The figures forecast for 1920 show the projected decrease in the amount of members' allowances, which will be a more accurate reflection of the cost following a reduction in the number of members since the elections in May 2019.
Councillor Eburn, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you very much, Chair. I do. The difference is that I thank the leader for your answer to the question. The differences you refer to wouldn't make up that total difference of £173,000 because some of the backdating would be up between about 40 and 60,000. So I would really like to see the exact figures, please, to explain the differences. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make a true comparison year on year. So if I could be provided with the exact figures, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chair.
I'm happy to ask Catherine Still to send out that briefing note.
Question number 2, Councillor Geek to Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Chair. We recently heard from the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth that part of our ongoing work on project delivery for regeneration and capital projects, part will take account of climate change. As stronger economic growth tends to be closely linked to a higher carbon footprint, and as we're now in a climate crisis, could we be told which parts of the Council's work on regeneration and capital projects will not take account of climate change?
Thank you for your question. Yes, as part of the refreshed project management framework across both councils, all project initiation documents have a section on the environment. Project managers, when commencing a project and throughout the life of that project, are required to complete an environmental impact assessment which considers positive and negative environmental impacts of each scheme. As new projects come to the various programme boards, environmental impact is considered as part of the overall deliverability. This means every regeneration and capital project will take account of climate change and ensure any impacts are assessed and properly mitigated.
Councillor Geek, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask if the Cabinet Member could please look at the work of other councils as well, with a view to future-proofing every single aspect of our work. To give just 2 examples, very short ones, Oxford City Council has allocated a climate emergency budget of £18 million for capital investment and £1 million operational budget to ensure delivery. And Warwick District Council today announced that they will hold a referendum on increasing council tax to provide the necessary funds. So there are good examples out there.
Yes, I'm sure we can take account of other councils. It has to be remembered at this time that our economy budget is actually the smallest budget on this council, or one of the smallest. I think there's 2. There's another one at the same level. But I'm sure that our Cabinet Member for Economy, our AD for Economy, is probably aware of those facts, and I will have a word.
Thank you. Question number 3, Councillor Wellham to Councillor Flatman.
Thank you, Chair. The Council is making a grant to Mid Suffolk Citizens Advice of £86,700 per annum for each of the next 3 years. Could we please be assured that there are no specific conditions attached to the making of the grant?
Thank you, Councillor Wellham, for your question. A grant of this nature will clearly have reasonable conditions attached, that the applicant uses the money for the purposes set out in the application, for example, and that they deliver the proposed outputs. I can reassure you that these conditions will be agreed with Mid Suffolk Citizens Advice prior to issuing the offer letter, rather than simply being imposed upon them without any dialogue.
Councillor Wellham, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that. Can I therefore assume that the conditions will be the normal Mid Suffolk District Council conditions when they make grants? And can you confirm that you will not require Mid Suffolk Citizens Advice to seek to reorganise or close branches?
At this moment in time, I don't think there's any of those going to take place, Councillor Wellham, but if anything changes, I will let you know.
Question number 4, Councillor Wellham to Councillor Morley.
The spring didn't work very well, did it? The Corporate Outputs document was discussed at a joint overview and scrutiny committee meeting held on 8th of January 2020. A number of the outputs are stated as giving support to various initiatives. Could we have clarity around the type of support to be given, particularly whether it is financial support or support by officers and or members of the 2 councils, and what outcomes are expected in respect of each of these initiatives?
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. As was explained during the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, there are approximately 9 Mid Suffolk references to providing support in the corporate outputs. These reflect the fact that the Council has an impact not just in terms of what it directly delivers, but also by working in partnership with others where the partner is the lead. The reference to support therefore relates to political and officer support, but does not exclude financial support. Where any proposal for direct financial support is made, however, this will come forward through Cabinet for decisions. I think the intended outcomes for each of these is obvious from the document. For example, the Museum of East Anglian Life to become the National Museum of Food, for businesses to access our local shop front and accessibility funding, etc. But I'm happy to provide further details outside of this meeting for anywhere where Councillor Wellham has additional queries.
Councillor Wellham, have you got a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your response. I'm unclear about the reason for supporting the A14 expressway, since to add capacity to a major trunk road will increase traffic, and I'm equally unclear how increasing traffic fits with our declaration of a climate emergency. Could you explain, please?
No, I can't.
Provide an explanation outside the meeting. What essentially it's about making sure we've got the infrastructure that we need for the county as a whole.
I think that this is rather a long answer, so we'll provide a response outside of this meeting, but it is imperative that our infrastructure is able to deliver our needs.
Moving on to question number 5. It's Councillor Wellham again to Councillor Morley.
Promise this is the last time. Spring's worn out. At a joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 8th of January, the leader of our council stated that various task groups would be providing the timescales for achieving the outcomes to be achieved in 2020-21 and beyond. Our task groups actively working towards providing agreed programme dates to be included in the document before the start of the municipal year 2020-2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe that the Chief Executive addressed a similar question to this at the Cabinet meeting that adopted these corporate outputs. As he explained, this is intended to be the first and last time that the corporate outputs are presented to councillors in this way. This is a reflection of the fact that the outputs were developed in parallel with the corporate plan. Now that the corporate plan and these outputs have been adopted, they're being incorporated into action plans for each of our 6 strategic priorities. These action plans are a combination of work that is already underway and new actions. Performance will then be measured from Q1 of 2020/21 against these action plans. With this in mind, officers are, at my request, conducting a review of our performance framework.
Councillor Wellham, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. I'm going to be short this time, Chair. I'm pleased that performance will be measured from Q1 of 2020-21 against these action plans, but we need to know what we're measuring against. So will we have the action plans with dates against them before the start of the municipal year so that we can start to measure performance against those dates?
I think that's what I said. Some of them may not have dates because the Climate Change Task Force are not finalising their shopping list until after that. But as soon as we know those dates, we'll let you know.
Question number 6, Councillor Mansell to Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. 2 of our adopted neighbourhood plans have recently been put to the test at the Planning Referrals Committee. Recommendations from development control officers were to go against the neighbourhood plan policies because they felt that they were lacking in housing allocations and/or policy wording. Given that MSDC is obliged to support communities making neighbourhood plans, how are we ensuring that they are getting the best impartial advice?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Mansell.
This matter is clearly topical and has been the subject of much discussion at not just planning referrals, but also at the recent training exercise for councillors. The officer recommendations contain significantly more nuance than you have suggested within your question, and I think it is important that we continue to talk about weight to be applied rather than your more adversarial language of going against. On that aside, I do recognise the sentiment. Our officers are serious in their intent to support communities to develop neighbourhood plans, though. They provide technical advice on the processes involved and signpost to impartial sources such as locality to ensure communities enter the process with their eyes open and optimise the support available to them. Officers also advise on funding sources available and help groups to engage their own professional advice, as well as providing both informal feedback as plans progress and formal feedback during the relevant consultation stage. There is a wealth of information available on our website which further explains the support available. However, because of the importance of this subject, I've provided a more detailed and substantive response in writing, but I do not intend to read that to you during this meeting. I am, of course, happy to discuss the matter further with you and officers outside the meeting if that would assist.
Councillor Madison, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. Yes, I must admit your written response was a bit too lengthy for me to take in the 5 minutes I received it before the meeting, and I think there may be more questions that arise from it. But I do have one question which you do pertain to in your last paragraph of the written response that I've got, and I thank you for your verbal response because it sounded a lot more interesting than the written one. As our JLP progresses to examination and adoption, will we need to appoint more staff to provide support to the communities who will need to review their neighbourhood plans in light of our joint local plan? And of course there may be a number of new communities that realise the benefits of having a neighbourhood plan. So that was my follow-up question, and I'm sure I will have some others that I would perhaps ask you outside the meeting.
Yes, thank you. Relevant question, but one I think which is a little too far away for me to answer immediately. That will certainly be borne in mind as the progression of the neighbourhood plan develops, the local plan develops, and as and when resources, if they are required, we will consider supplying.
Right, so moving on to agenda item number 9, MC/19/37, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Report. I would like to take Councillor Welham's report in 2 parts. The first part will cover everything but the Gateway 14 element. This element of his report will be taken in part 2 of the agenda when the Council actually discuss the Gateway 14 report. Councillor Welham, please introduce your report, which is for noting.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the report covers 5 topics: the corporate plan outputs, the Western Suffolk Community Safety Partnership, Gateway 14, draft general fund budget, draft housing revenue account budget. There were 4 separate meetings held during January. The Gateway 14 discussion was held with the public excluded, but this particular report has been written specifically for a public agenda. So I'm happy to take questions on any of these topics, but obviously discussion on the recommendations from the Gateway 14 item will more logically be taken at item 17A.
Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Welham? Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And Keith, I just wanted to ask regarding the Community Safety Partnership meeting, do you think we as a council actually make enough use of the various items that are discussed, looking at various grants, opportunities? I know there's quite a range of activities that the Community Safety Partnership deals with, but and it's very difficult within that huge partnership covering about 2/3 of the land area of Suffolk for our voice to be heard. How effective do you think that might be, or have you got any suggestions from the committee of how it might be improved so that we can play a more active role in that? Thanks.
I think our officers and our members are very active within that partnership, and clearly they work with Kim Warner of Suffolk Police, and I don't think any of the people within that partnership would be backward at coming forward if there was more that we could do. But it's certainly we have Sarah Mansell Councillor Mansell is a member of the partnership, and I'm sure that if there were more that we could do, she'd be coming and saying so. Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Councillor Wellham? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wellham. Moving on to agenda item number 10, MC/19/38, General Fund Budget 2020 to 2021 and 4-year outlook. I refer you to the revised Appendix C in the tabled papers. I would like to invite Councillor Whitehead to introduce this paper and move the recommendations in the report. Could I have a seconder? Oh, sorry. Thank you. John, would you like to make your proposal?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to present to members this evening Report MC 1938. This is the 4th General Fund Budget which I presented to Council. When I introduced my first budget in 2017, I told Full Council that it was gratifying to inherit such a robust financial position for our General Fund and such strong reserves. And at that time, I put forward 3 main factors behind this. Firstly, the magnificent contribution of my predecessor, Councillor Haley, in his past stewardship of this portfolio. Secondly, the uninterrupted period of strong economic discipline and strict financial prudence exercised by Conservative administrations over many years. And thirdly, the significant contribution of our management team in consistently delivering positive annual financial outturns against budget and their exercise of strict financial discipline. I felt a great burden of responsibility in preserving Councillor Haley's legacy. I'm also pleased to say that those second and third mentioned factors continue to this day. Now, prior to the budget coming today before Full Council, it has been considered by Cabinet in January and February meetings, and it's also been before the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The budget has also been subject of a detailed presentation by our finance team to an all-member briefing in January. But I do remain conscious that we have 12 new members who joined the Council last May, and for many this may be their first real exposure to local authority finances. So I do want to reinforce some key observations, even if some of this is old news to longer-serving members. We've had a deliberate policy of minimising the use of New Homes bonus in balancing our budgets over the last few years. And indeed, none of our actual outturns since New Homes bonus started have taken a penny from New Homes bonus for our normal council running costs. This 2021 budget likewise uses no New Homes bonus to balance the books. Within the report, paragraph 810 I think clearly shows why this is important, because New Homes bonus will fall away to zero by 2023-24. Now, something surely will replace it, but who knows what, or indeed how much at this stage. And we do know that district council funding is not the government's top priority going forward. Central government support grants have fallen away over the last few years, and that's why we've been determined as a council that we can stand on our own 2 feet, generating our own income to support our expenditure. We achieve this by 4 principal methods. 1, we have made various pool investments, all of which produce income streams. 2, we are building up Sifco to £50 million by investing in secure real estate assets with quality tenants paying a significant rental income stream. And 3, we grow our tax base. That's new housing, along with bringing empty properties back into use. And that provides a 1% plus increase to our tax base each year. And finally, 4, over the years, we've made modest below inflation increases to our council tax. This year we're proposing a 1.66% increase, which works out at £2.76 a year for a Band D home. Now that's just 28 pence a month extra for a typical person paying direct debit in 10 monthly instalments. And do note that 60% of our homes actually fall into bands A to C, so they will actually pay even less than this modest increase. And incidentally, it's also the lowest increase of any district council in Suffolk. This budget shows a healthy surplus even after setting aside two quite large sums of money, one for £1 million and one for £500,000. £1 million is to Commercial Development Risk Management Reserve, because our in-district developments of brownfield and greenfield sites, such as the middle school, the Needham Mark headquarter site, and particularly our Gateway 14 site, these are not risk-free. Development never is, so it's best to have this extra contingency. Now, £500,000 is for climate change initiatives. Some interesting ideas emerged from several meetings with the opposition groups, and some of these have been passed across the Climate Change Task and Finish group for scoping. And several of our officers have also put in considerable work examining and refining these proposals. Now that work is ongoing, but it's crystal clear to me that if we are to take real action on climate change, then real money will need to be set aside. This £500,000 is just a starter for 2020-21, and I know it has been welcomed by the cross-party Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We are spending from our earmarked reserves during next year, but reserves will still be above £10 million by the end of 2021, as shown in paragraph 7.6. The figure I'm quoting ignores community infrastructure levy, because I regard that as special and ring-fenced. But it's great to still have such a healthy financial cushion as we go forward. It will let us invest in our leisure facilities, business development, and the many emerging environmental initiatives. The report in front of you also covers capital, all detailed in Appendix B. 14.9 million spend in 2021, which will include the balance of Sifco, the Needham Market Lakes Visitor Centre Cafe, and leisure centre development, along with a significant carry-forward spend from prior year, just ending. Members should also note our proposed change to reduce the 25% discount for unoccupied and unfurnished residential dwellings from 3 months down to 28 days. That brings in more council tax. It acts as an incentive not to keep properties vacant, but it still gives landlords time to re-let their property. And following concerns raised by various members...
Sorry, John, you're just over your time. Can you wind this up? Thank you.
I'll also refer to Section 12 pay policy. And if you can just give me before moving to recommendations, I do want to acknowledge the hard work that the finance team has put into this budget preparation. So along with the 3 detailed reports here, they've had similar deadlines to produce similar for BABA, continuing to work on the current year numbers, and also due to lengthy delays by our external auditors, it means our team are still assisting the auditors with last year's conclusions. So our finance team are juggling an amazing number of balls in the air, so I salute their professionalism and their dedication. Back office staff rarely get the credit they deserve. So just want to say a big thank you to them. So I'm happy to answer questions, and the finance team are here to assist me. But first, I'd like to move the full suite of recommendations.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second.
We will now move to questions and debate. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. When we get to the debate element, councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. So, Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment to the draft budget today, if I may. Together, we, the Green Group and the Lib Dem Group, have worked to bring forward proposals for Mid Suffolk's budget. As half the council, and therefore representing half the residents of Mid Suffolk, we have coordinated to produce visionary, ambitious and financially sound proposals for the next financial year. We started work back in November, holding meetings with finance officers, senior officers and the administration to ensure that we can deliver proposals that both respond to the climate emergency we face and future-proof Mid Suffolk for all our residents, visitors and businesses. We produced 10 key proposals, and following work with officers and members, some aspects of these are now being taken forward and have already been included in the corporate outputs for next year. These proposals include promoting sustainable new homes through the provision of technical and planning advice, improving tree cover across the district, providing greater access for all to the council, improving the democratic relationship with residents, especially young people, and improving residents' and businesses' confidence in and experience of planning. We commend the administration for taking this on and agreeing to this. It has been recognised that this is a clear example of how our ideas are providing meaningful action for our communities. However, it is not enough, and we can do much more to future-proof our district, which is what this amendment proposes to do. You have the amendment in front of you on page 25 of the tabled papers, and this has been sense-checked by finance and legal, as well as being the subject of intense discussions with the Chief Executive, the leader and other members and officers. We are pleased there has been so much positive interest in these. Perhaps this is an example of our continuing ideas and vision that we are providing towards the council and for the administration. However, as members representing half the council, we're happy to provide good, ambitious plans for the future. None of this is new. Many councils are doing this already, such as ensuring all new council homes are carbon neutral in York, and leading by example, encouraging developers to do the same, such as with the Z-Pod examples we recently heard about. We should be encouraging good, environmentally efficient design and ensuring that this is available to all, whether a self-build or small developer. Many councils are investing in electric vehicle charging points to promote business in their town and city centres. Why aren't we doing so? And looking at the examples of Peterborough and Dundee, for example. Combine this with supporting residents to extend their stay in Stowmarket and ensuring the more elderly and vulnerable can easily access the town. We encourage much more active use of our district's main town. And finally, we need to get back our community's confidence in planning. We've shown how our ideas are already being taken forward, but we need to bolster our planning committee work with further investment in highways to prove we are listening and acting on our community's concerns. We have money in the bank. We should not be in the business of stockpiling £9.2 million of taxpayers' money, which is just 10% less than our net budget. A parish council with this level of reserves would be sanctioned. This is not our money, and at present we can't confidently see how the administration is going to spend what we have. Our ideas in this amendment won't cost the earth, but will help to meet the challenge of the climate emergency and future-proof the district for our communities. Each year, we put forward well-worked-out proposals, providing some vision and ambition for the council, learning from what other councils do and investing in our communities. I urge you to accept this amendment and ask my colleague John Field to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Are you reserving your right to speak?
No, I think I'll speak now.
Okay.
Well done. Yes, I wish to second this amendment. We do recognise that you've discussed issues with us and made some amendments to your budget, notably allocating some 500k to issues that impact on drivers of climate change. However, we believe that our ideas are much wider than just the environmental issues, important as those particular issues are. And the amendment really proposes to cover a number of our ideas forward. We propose action to ensure all housing is close to zero carbon as possible, and that we accelerate our housing programme at a cost of increased but realistic borrowing. We should aim to increase our housing stock substantially over the next 30 years, replacing the stock sold on right to buy or that just unfit to upgrade to modern standards. We believe that both issues are vital. We desperately need new housing at low rent to support our low-wage economy. Unfortunately, tourism, leisure, care and farming do not pay well. We need to provide a clear lead on the achievements that are possible in sustainable housing. We need to help local builders get valid modern designs without high individual start-up expenditure, solving all the unfamiliar issues they have with the near passive house homes. Competition that's proposed will produce outstanding deliverable designs that are well publicised. On electric vehicles, we just need to get moving. The tide is turning. It would be good to be on the front foot. If we just enabled all the Prius taxi owners to switch to the hybrid plug-in version, it would be a great start. But particularly on highways planning, we need to get the endless resistance to housing growth we need attenuated. Residents who just don't want their environment to change whatever, whoever needs houses. The position is made significantly worse by the common belief that highway solutions to support development are just not adequate. One officer in the county who can spend up to 4 hours on each development can't do the planning or negotiation necessary to satisfy residents that their interests are being addressed. If you look at the increase within the district, the local asset value, the gross domestic product, or even just the SIL, the yield of value of reducing opposition and therefore delay far outweighs the costs we would propose. The value of the enhancement to that would be, I believe, fantastic. So please support this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, do you accept this amendment?
First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Eburn and Councillor Field for bringing forward this amendment. Because as many councillors will be aware, there's been detailed political discussions through a series of meetings prior to the Budget Committee Council. These meetings involved both myself, Councillor Morley, Councillor Brewster, Councillor Eburn, Councillor Field, Councillor Stringer and Councillor Wellham. I think I've included everyone there. And these have been to discuss the 10 ideas proposed by the Green and Liberal Democrat groups, and accumulating the administration specifically agreeing to adopt a number of additional items to the corporate outputs at the last Cabinet meeting. The 5 budget amendments proposed tonight were not adopted as additional corporate outputs, but only because the administration has already developed very similar corporate outputs themselves. But it is fantastic to see that we are in such alignment across all our political groups. Through the conversations between councillors, we've already shared the detailed scoping work that officers have developed for each of these 5 amendments. What this scoping shows is that while we already agree to the principles sitting behind each of these 5 proposals, further work is needed to ensure we avoid duplication with work already underway, ensure that they are deliverable, and ensure that such proposals will actually help deliver the outcomes that we all want to see. So in summary, I'm actually slightly confused really by this amendment because, as opposition groups will know, it is premature and necessary. The further scoping work...
John, you should really just be saying yes or no.
It's already... okay. Right. But budget provision is already in place with service budgets, additional 500,000, and indeed from the £9 million of reserves that Councillor Eburn is so keen to spend. The administration cannot therefore support this amendment tonight. Thank you.
No.
So we will move into a question and answer period, and so remember these are questions. Councillor Otten first.
Very much. Yes, I would like...
These are questions for Rachel. Or John, sorry.
It's a question for John. Yes, I'd like to ask...
John Field?
No, John White.
No, this is just on the amendment.
It is on the amendment.
Yes.
Oh, right, I see.
The question needs to be to Rachel or to John Field.
Given that Councillor Whitehead's given such a detailed response, it's only fair that therefore that questions are also directed to him on the amendment because he's provided such detailed comments on this.
That seems fair to me, so I'm going to say that's okay.
I would just like to understand why you feel you could not support the item 5 in the amendment. some other members here may recall that only a few days ago I actually asked that County Council increase the number of highways officers for this very reason. And I would just like to tell you that I had quite significant support on that individual item. So I believe that there is some real need, as far as the public is concerned, dealing with major planning applications, that this should be given much more serious consideration.
Answer that, John.
Yes, once I remember it, yes. Right. Over the years, I've certainly had real concerns on various highway issues that have come in on planning applications in my ward. But we mustn't lose track of the fact that Suffolk County Council are the Highways Authority, and they're the ones that provide the highway-related responses on all planning applications. So whether we employ our own experts or not, the County Council will still be required to comment and attend planning meetings. The planning process already involves competing professional opinions and separate highway expertise, sometimes employed by the District Council. It just feels that this would not add clarity or confidence to that the proposal is actually trying to seek.
Councillor Stringer.
Sorry, Councillor Whitehead, this should be just a one-word answer. Do you agree with the Oxford English Dictionary definition of the word emergency, that it means a dangerous situation requiring immediate action?
A one-word answer? Probably.
Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. That's the most political answer I've heard in about 53 years. Just a couple of points here. I absolutely understand a lot of these points where they're coming from. I haven't obviously been a party to some of the discussions that have taken place between the two groups, but I do wonder whether some of these things couldn't be adopted anyway within our existing plans without having to necessarily allocate extra resources, because I do think there's some very good ideas here. The only word of caution I would have is it perhaps could be slightly more specific. And we don't need to debate
Councillor
about
Passmore, is this a question?
Well, no, this is the point. Let me just finish, please, if you may, Chairman. We need to be precise about exactly what we're asking for. So, for example, we can't debate what sustainable means tonight because we'll be here all night. We'll have views. I think I know where we're coming from. When it comes to electrification, are we sure where we're going? It's a good idea. Is it going to be future-proofed as we go forward for these super fast charging systems you can get now and all that, which I don't know enough about. So all I'm saying is a word of caution. As it stands, I'm not sure I can quite support it as it is, but we don't want to lose some of these ideas. So my question is, looking at some of that, can some of these be incorporated in any case without having to allocate extra budgets and so on anyway?
Councillor Councillor Whitehead, do you want to answer?
Yeah. Sorry, well, I just feel that the reason I gave a long response to the amendment was to say that so much of this is actually in progress and being scoped, and so a simple answer is yes this time.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if I could answer, I think one of our concerns is, for example, electric vehicle charging points. So many councils are putting these in. How many have we got in Stowmarket? We haven't. Okay, we've got one at Costa that doesn't work at the moment on the A14. So other councils are doing this work, and we're way behind. So there's none of this waiting for technology or just seeing what's going to happen. There's so many things that other councils are doing that we could just learn from and take off the shelf. So I'm surprised that these things here aren't being included, because it's so simple to actually put forward. The electric EV charging points, we've got a company in Stowmarket that does them. How many officers from Mid Suffolk had visited them in the last year? None. They haven't seen anybody. You know, we could be using them with our own, with the house building competition, for example. We've run things like that before. You could actually get off-the-shelf designs for people to use, and that could be done tomorrow. So all of this could be done. We don't have to wait for anybody. Other councils are doing this, but these things aren't being taken forward at the moment, which is why we've put them forward as an amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is quite specific on the fifth one of the amendments, and maybe the officers can help. And that is to ask how much we've actually spent on external support to our planning officers in relation to highways matters. I understand we've spent quite a significant amount of money on one particular application. I wondered whether officers have got any kind of idea of how much we actually spent on that particular external support.
Yeah.
Mr. Isbell, you were...
Through you, I'm not aware of the immediate figures. I mean, we have a close working relationship now that we're in Endeavour House, and from our point of view as officers, we think that's as effective as it has ever been at this council. And to my certain knowledge, certainly in the middle 2000s, the district was interested in making sure that its highways advice was effective and coordinated. We now seek, through planning performance agreements with applicants, to actually recover highways costs in a way that we've not done previously, and so to that extent I think we're confident that that's an ongoing relationship which is building, and the highways recover their costs indeed through our charge pre-application services, and indeed that was a first point that this council started as an initiative. So I'm not sure what I can add on the detail.
Councillor Burns, you have a question?
No, it was a supplementary answer to Councillor Whitehead's answer to item 5 on the amendment, but Mr. Isbell has just stolen most of my thunder on that one. The point is that we have long been willing to explore how highways advice is provided, but the present arrangements are considered effective to ensure timely planning, and highways advice is available. Obviously, it's something the Chief Planning Officer keeps under practical review with colleagues at Suffolk County Council, and will continue to do so.
Councillor Carter.
Yes, sorry, I've forgotten the majority of my question now. However, in regards to the, I assume was a no answer that we were given earlier, there was a phrase used showing how much alignment there are between us. I'd personally love to see that alignment. Where is the evidence as to the alignment as to regards to, other than partial lip service and saying we're going in the same right direction? Where are we putting the fine line saying actually we are going to do this, and where is the action? Especially as the Environment Forum hasn't actually properly met yet or had any say yet.
Councillor Fleming, would you like to answer this?
Yes, I mean, I think it's disingenuous to suggest that nothing's being done, because I think everyone across the floor knows that a lot is being done. Don't you?
No.
Well, I think you're missing quite a few points that are coming out of the work of the task force and in which you participate. So I think your communications with your task force members probably need to be improved a bit, because we have a lot of work that will be put forward for approval and consideration by Cabinet. The first tranche of suggestions we anticipate coming before Cabinet in April. And I think we all know that. We can't just put forward suggestions willy-nilly, which is what you tend to be suggesting. We can't put electric vehicle charging points all over the place without understanding where they should go and who's going to pay
everywhere.
for them. And also without understanding whether it's a good thing. There are enormous problems with electrical vehicle charging and battery disposal. All these things need to be considered, and we need a sensible long-term investment strategy for getting ourselves clear of the carbon dependency. And that is not doing things in sort of 6 months after coming into the administration. I'm sorry, but you're very off base with that point.
you want to come back, Councillor Carter?
Please. My point was actually regarding actual evidence and action, going back to the point regarding emergency needs immediate action, and also saying about the battery disposal. There may be problems with that in the future, but we're not going to be killing the planet with batteries, whereas our current vehicles are. And we have 5 years to actually get this done. If we don't do it within 5 years, the damage is irreversible. So we need action now.
These are meant to be questions. So we'll move on to Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. So it's encouraging to hear of this alignment. Just referring specifically to amendment number 1, the proposal for zero carbon homes. Is that part of this alignment? Was that part of what you're referring to?
Who would like to answer this?
The question was to Councillor Whitehead.
It's interesting insofar as actually item 1, where it refers to, let me quote here, £1 million upfront capital funding to borrow against our own house building programme. I mean, although this is being put forward as an amendment under the general fund budget, to me that anyway, as I understand it anyway, is a housing revenue account, because the housing revenue account is ring fenced and that copes with all our council house building, as we'll come on to in the next item. And also, I mean, it also talks about all new housing should be zero carbon. The question is, how realistic is that now? If the next planning referrals committee, somebody puts that forward, would that actually be a sensible proposition in terms of actually delivering, large-scale housing in our district?
Sorry, Molly, do you want to come back?
Thanks. You asked the question, how feasible is that? We heard recently in a talk arranged by John Matheson how feasible that is. I think there's general agreement that it is.
Yes, John can just come back, and then Rachel, yeah.
Well, I attended that lecture and I found it most interesting, but I think there was somewhere where he talked about, was it something like £180,000 a typical house price, which basically meant unless you put the land in for free or even less than free, it still wasn't economically viable. That was my understanding, although I found it very interesting and very encouraging.
Must come in with a point of order there. National House Building Federation, the cost per square metre of an average build is somewhere between £1,800 and £2,000, so it actually made it £100 per square metre less.
Okay, Rachel, yeah, go.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on that, on answering that question. All homes should be zero carbon because other councils have shown this is possible. We've had an award-winning scheme in Norwich, for example, that one of our partners that we're now working with has been involved with. There's schemes in York, as I mentioned in my introduction to this amendment. So this is being done. There needs to be some kind of talk about alignment, but there needs to be some kind of urgency in actually doing something and using the funds that we have available. And we are able to build market housing. We can build our own market housing. We can use the Z-Pod idea. We could use we could run our own competition for the idea. But these are all of the things within this amendment have been done by other councils. Nothing is new. Nothing is new technology. So we just need to really get on and do it.
Now I've got Councillor Mayor and Councillor Byrne up for questions, but we're basically moving into debate. Let's not beat about the bush. That's what we're basically doing. So shall we just officially move into debate? Oh, do you want to just ask a question, Rick?
Thank you, Chair. A question for Councillor Eburn. It's my experience that
if you give someone a job and then you tell them how to do it, you achieve mediocrity. We all voted to establish a climate change task force. Does she feel that by bringing these, certainly the first three of the amendments, does she feel that this undermines the task force or supports it?
Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Mayor. Firstly, two observations. One, the task force isn't actually going to come forward with any of its proposals until after this budget has been signed off and approved. So we won't know any of that until then anyway. But secondly, a lot of this is to do with business. So EV charging points in Stowmarket, people will come into Stowmarket, they will stay because they need to charge up their cars, they will go into the local shops and businesses, and that's a business proposition. Zero carbon housing, when you have zero carbon housing, your heating bills are extremely low, and so what that enables people to do is actually to maybe to take jobs that were, say, a part-time job where previously they had to do a full-time job. People have less sort of stressful lives in that circumstance. So it's a social outcome for there. So there are much broader outcomes than just environmental. And I think just to try to pin it into an environmental thing for the task force is not fair on the task force. Plus, as we heard from Councillor Fleming, there's a huge amount that's being looked at there. To put more into it really is unfair on them. And I think there's lots of things that can be done now that we could just agree today. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Byrne, I had you down next. Do you want to ask a question, make a point?
No, I wasn't asking a question. I was just about to raise.
So, well, then you've only got your 3 minutes and you can't speak again, David.
As to whether we were in questions and answers, or whether we were in debate.
Okay, well done.
That seemed to be a confused situation.
Okay, Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of the Environment Task Group, I would just like to make a couple of comments. And I'm sure Councillor Fleming will be very pleased to know that I have been keeping my colleagues on this side of the chamber very well informed about the progress.
Sorry, can I just interrupt, Andy? So now we've moved into debate. We're going to give you 3 minutes and everyone has the same time, okay? Just want to say that this is now debate.
Okay, thank you. So the Environment Task Group has had a number of meetings and we've had some very interesting presentations. However, it seems to me that we are still some way off coming through with a set of recommendations. Since we started the process back in October, the evidence for man-made climate change has continued to rack up, and if anything, things are now more urgent. But if I refer you to the terms of reference of the task force, it uses words like urgent, act decisively, it mentions an emergency, and then it talks about completing our work by the end of March. Well, we're not actually meeting in March. The next meeting's been postponed till April. And then we featured briefly in the corporate outputs document here, where it talks about early actions coming out in the winter and then full strategy and action plan being signed off in the spring. And it doesn't seem to me that the kind of urgency that we need has characterised what we've actually been doing in the task force. So as we have some proposals before us in this amendment, and these are not wild ideas, but I think they are sensible, measured proposals, I see no reason why these proposals, which we hopefully will come forward from the task group, will not complement these that we have before us today. Climate change is developing with the speed of an Australian bushfire, yet we, having declared an emergency, are moving with the speed of a melting glacier. Let's get some actions going, actions that will help future-proof Mid Suffolk, and so I commend this amendment and I look for support from all parts of the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to go through the sort of history of our proposals. As we said before, we started off in November, engaging early, actually listening to members' criticisms of previous budget ideas that we've had, to actually make sure they're well costed, that they're legal, and actually we've shared them with the administration a long way off, so any of the rough corners can be knocked off. So it's sort of disappointing that all of this lot couldn't actually been quite easily subsumed into the budget, but of course you have that opportunity now. I'm going to spend most of my time focusing on one of the ideas. And surprising, it's not the electrical vehicle ones, although I'm very disappointed with some of the comments about electric vehicles coming from the administration today. We need to get together on that and get to the truth of the matter. The competition about housing plans. This is not purely environmental, and this is the point. We have a number of issues within planning. We have, according to Lord Deben, we're passing utter crap in terms of housing design in Suffolk here. That's Lord Deben's quote. And environmentally, a lot of the stuff that we're approving and we're building is not up to snuff. It's going to be unsustainable in mortgageable terms in less than a decade. So we need to get sharp about that. We also need to support our own building industries and our own suppliers into the building industry here in Suffolk and in Mid Suffolk. So the idea of having the competition was to knock off that edge, get the Suffolk Preservation Society involved, so we do design a brilliant Suffolk design, something that's ours, not just off the shelf, that's anywhere in Britain. It's something about us. Yes, there is prize money involved in this for the winning architect, but the prize for us is that those plans then become open source. So if you're going to be a self-builder or a small builder, your biggest initial cost from bringing forward a housing development will be the cost of the design of the plans. They'll already be designed and you can have them for free. For decades, our local plan housing numbers, its face has been washed by windfall and self-builders. To actually ensure that happens will mean we hit our housing delivery targets, taking less stress off our planning policy team and actually delivering on those housing outcomes. Okay. And those housing outcomes will also be fit for decades to come and not just for a short term. Which is why, if alone you could only support one of these items, I'd certainly suggest you need to...
I'm finishing off, Councillor String.
Yeah, I've had 2 minutes 38 at the moment. I'm timing it. Yes, so even if you could only approve one, please approve just item 2. Happy to amend any of it if you need to, but I'd encourage you to vote in favour of this amendment. Thank you.
Okay.
And that's 2 minutes 53, by the way.
So, Caxton.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sorry that if anyone's feeling that because we have a climate change task force that they're surplus to requirements here. We do have a climate change task force. We have plenty of funding, a huge amount of funding, more than the £500,000 we can dip into. We need time to get a profound knowledge and carefully plan how we're going to attack this emergency. Just because it's an emergency doesn't mean you run to a fire and kick it about all over the place. You need to take a careful look at exactly what you're doing and make sure you get the most out of your money. That every single pound is reducing the most carbon, creating the best ecosystems and doing the best for the cause that it possibly can. So please just let this cross-party task force that's built up of members all around this chamber get on with their work and don't take bread out of their mouths, because we will be coming back to you with some good, ambitious and forward-thinking recommendations very soon. Thank you.
Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Oops, don't answer back. Yeah, just a few other points I would like to raise. If you look at point 1 there regarding potentially putting an extra £1 million up front, I personally am not happy about just signing it off on the basis of what we have here in front of us. There's a lot of money. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I do think we've got to be very careful just committing £1 million notes of taxpayers' money without being absolutely sure we know what's going to be done, timescales, outputs, deliveries, who's going to be responsible. Really important we don't run into a muddle with that. Again, I'm not against the idea, but I can't support it just in that state there. Just need to know the details. Regarding some of the others, I think John's already said many of those can be incorporated anyway, so I would support that on the basis that if they're going to be included, we don't need to deal with this. The other thing I am, just if I could elaborate on the electrical points, I wasn't trying to say we shouldn't do it. The new technology, I forget what it's actually called, the really fast charging systems you get now. Are we absolutely sure we've got the right infrastructure? I just want reassurance that the design capabilities... Well, you're saying that, I know that, Andrew, I get it. But I do think if we're going to commit money to it, we need to be absolutely sure, and I'm not doing this to kick it into the long grass or delay it. Let's make sure we've got the terms of reference to spec, future-proof it, of course, that's so it can be extended. I'm not an engineer, I don't know what you need to do to that, and so on. So we need to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I'm not against it, but I do think on the basis of this, if it can be included, and with the task group looking at this, certainly urge them to get on with it as quickly as possible is the sensible thing to do. And the last point about the help on the highways, again, what are the terms of reference? What is the issue we're trying to deal with? Quantify it with some evidence and data before we commit putting money into it. And I think we need to be a bit more precise. And I do know there's a lot of liaison now with the county. Sure, we can always improve it. We can always improve everything. But let's be sensible about it. Let's get on with these things, yes, but I don't know that we need to support the amendment to do it, because if most of this work is being done in any case, and we can get it from resources within the existing budget, well, that's what we should do. But I am worried about that £1 million notes for that one, number one. I would urge members to be very careful when they consider how to vote on this, for that reason.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, if I can just touch very briefly upon the question of alignment. I think it is important to remember the wider perspective on this, that we have had discussions for a number of months, and although there are particular objections around these specific amendments, we have incorporated an enormous amount of the original suggestions into the budget itself, so I think that's where the alignment comes from. I have to say, I'm not going to reiterate a number of the points that have already been made, but there is actually one point that after Councillor Stringer spoke, I just want to sort of touch upon with regards to this competition, because I'm not entirely clear how this would work in practice. So I appreciate, Councillor Stringer, you've already spoken, but if that could be addressed by either the proposer or the seconder, I'd welcome some clarification on this. Because my understanding of what's being proposed is that architects produce a design or designs that would then win this competition, and that would then become the basis for a sort of an off-the-shelf model that you could use across the county. The point I would just sort of rhetorically make is, what then becomes of the intellectual property for those designs? Does that sit with the architect, or can anyone use it? And if that is the case, what the council owns it. So what is the incentive for architects to participate in this if they can win £20,000? If I were a commercial developer architect, I'd think that was a bit of a waste of money, if I'm honest. And I'm not quite sure that's the kind of... I agree that there are improvements we can make to design in house building across the county, but I'm just not sure this is the way forward. And if we are to incorporate the sort of the underlying motivations behind this, I'd much rather we go away, think about it properly, and come back with some more robust proposals. And so on that basis, I'm afraid I can't support this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. We have heard tonight from councillors opposite that infrastructure must be able to support our needs, and therefore we must support a road building programme, the A14 Expressway. But we've also heard that we cannot provide the infrastructure for electric vehicles because the technology may become out of date, or because it's difficult and we don't understand it. We've also heard from Councillor Whitehead that an emergency may not be a dangerous situation requiring immediate action. And one of the main requirements of agreeing that we are in a crisis is that we must act as if this crisis is real. So surely a budget-setting meeting must act as if the crisis is real. These proposals, this amendment, then it's not kicking a fire about. They're an essential minimum, a start. And there is expertise among our officers, there's expertise among the members on this side. Please can we not let a lack of understanding defeat us?
Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've heard a lot about electric charging points, and we're doing nothing about it. Can I just read you a few notes here? The administration's ambition is not just to approach this by installing EV charging points, but to broaden this out to explore the best approach getting people into electric vehicles overall. Hence the broadest description in the corporate plan outputs. We currently have an EV charging point at Needham Lake. We are due to install one at Eye. There is scoping going on for the Regal car park in Stowmarket as soon as and that would probably be something like 40, 50 weeks, I dare say. But it's after we're regenerating the car park there, and we need to do that to get the power coming into it. So that is being scoped at the moment. We're currently identifying a list of further potential sites across the district. we're exploring a solar carport project, initially for Stowmarket Leisure Centre. This will in time not only offer many EV points, but will also be able to deliver carbon savings to our leisure centres through battery storage and solar generation. This would be a better investment, and if successful after a trial period, could be installed in other car parks across the district, which reduces pressure on the grid and the need to fund substantial power stations, power installations. We're also researching partnering with companies such as E&O Charging or BP Charge Master to install EV points in more of our car parks. We will be promoting the government scheme where car owners can get a discount on the price of brand new low emission vehicles through a grant the government provides to vehicle dealerships and manufacturers, maximum grant being $3,500. The costs of EV charge points vary considerably depending on the type of charger, rapid chargers being the most expensive of course, and the proximity of the power source. We've installed similar we will be installing similar fast chargers which have a cost of around $13,000 to $20,000, the difference due to the connection costs charged by UK power networks. Greens have previously raised licensing fee reduction of 10% for electric vehicle taxis. This would work out at approximately £30 per licence. It would cost approximately $3,500 to Mid Suffolk in loss of income, but it's also likely to be unlikely to be an incentive, in part because the saving on the licence fee would be considerably outweighed by the higher cost of EV vehicles at present. We are working on it.
Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to talk a bit about the need for highway expertise. I'd like to give an example. I attended a development control meeting recently. The traffic impact assessment for that application took me about 12 hours to work through. I mean, I'm a sad person if I spend that amount of time on time. But I did, and I found glaring errors in it. I explained those to the Development Control Committee. Suffolk County Council had not found them, and there was no highways officer present. And I also think we're missing out on highway improvements, ending up with traffic and safety risks we could have avoided. Think of the co-op in Stow Upland where people have been injured. On the first day of term in September, two children were injured, and yet the county highways officer had said it was safe. I don't think so. So it would appear to me that we don't have enough, or Suffolk County Council don't have the resource to provide a proper service to it. Now, one of my wishes when being elected to this council was to see real improvements to the centre of Stowmarket. I've said this 4 times now, including a wider range of shopping opportunity within the town centre, a broad range of nighttime leisure opportunities, public art, improved streetscape, better pedestrian facilities, safe cycling through and around and to and from Stowmarket, good links to nearby settlements, including community and public transport, which is attractive and cheap or free to use. We need to encourage people to stay in Stowmarket for an hour or two. This could be by providing free parking after 3 o'clock on 1 day a week. Introducing EV points could encourage electric car users to spend time and money in Stowmarket. And we hear some of these ideas are being taken up, but it's important we do it now. When will we see proposals for improving Stowmarket and our district-wide residents' perception of Stowmarket? So there is not a good perception of Stowmarket across the district. People will go to Ipswich or Bury or somewhere else rather than Stowmarket. And we've got to change that. We've got to improve the perception and show what Stowmarket has to offer. Our proposals will benefit the economy and environment of Stowmarket and encourage residents to shop local rather than driving to Bury or elsewhere. And that will reduce the carbon entering the atmosphere. If we don't have EV points, people with electric cars will go elsewhere to shop. These are 5 quick wins, these 5 in the amendment, and I commend every aspect of this amendment to everyone in the chamber.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. I'd like to use my 3 minutes regarding one aspect, and that is the zero carbon housing. We've heard regarding where's the incentive for, if we get this standard out there, where would the incentive be for people to apply for it? Well, I'd argue is what's it going to cost us to find out if we actually put this initiative out there, as opposed to what would the benefit be if it actually pays off, and we do have this standard of affordable housing and of environmentally friendly housing. We have a lot more to gain than we could possibly lose. I would also like to point out that the number of councils that have now declared a climate emergency now stands at 261. I will admit, out of those 261, 60 of them already have their own zero carbon schemes, passive housing ones, prior to their climate crisis. Yet, would you be aware that 20 of those, since announcing a climate crisis, have put forward their own zero carbon housing schemes? Why are we not one of them? We are part of the heart of Suffolk. We are supposed to be Suffolk, the greenest county. Yet I see little evidence of it other than a name. So I don't see a downfall to actually putting this forward. I don't see a downfall to actually being a leader rather than a follower. So why can't we put our foot, why can't we action rather than just say we're going to action and actually go for a scheme that's not going to cost us anything but could literally save the world? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, I must say I'm afraid I'd have to call them slightly nitpicking points from various members opposite. These proposals have been in discussion with the administration since November, so there's been about 10 or 12 weeks to sort out any precise details that might have been wanted. And really just to say that it is now a climate emergency, and if you look back a dozen years or so, there was somebody called Lord Nicholas Stern, an economist, he suggested the investment of a small amount of our gross domestic product in addressing climate change a dozen years ago. And if we'd have actually followed his advice nationally and locally, then it wouldn't be an emergency now. But unfortunately, it is an emergency now. So what I would say to you is, look, don't let the precise getting it right, the enemy of the good. We need to get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak to the free parking in Stowmarket. This council, on a regular basis, for special events in Stowmarket, issues free parking for residents of the surrounding area and Stowmarket to come in and support events in Stowmarket. That is to be congratulated. However, there is a cost to that, in that we lose car park revenue. What we're proposing here, which is 1 day a week after 3 p.m, would give every week people the ability to come into town and to spend their money. When we offer free parking in Stowmarket, does this council actually come back to this wider membership and actually say, well, it's going to cost us £5,000 for the day, do we have your permission? No, they don't. But we have a costed proposal here, which we know is going to cost us £30,000. It's a drop in the ocean against the car park income, which is £661,000. I think that figure is a very high figure and is largely borne by Stowmarket residents. So I would make a plea, why don't we just do something to support the Stowmarket local economy? This is not going to cost us a lot of money. We've put in a situation here where we're prepared to review it in due course. We're not saying do it forever. We need to see whether it works. And I cannot see why members opposite would not support just that one element of the 5 points within this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to reiterate too many points, but I feel that, since our electors have elected 50% Lib Dem and Green councillors, it would be slightly perhaps democratic deficit to totally disregard the proposals put here since they were put forward by the joint parties. And I think that, if there is alignment, as you say there is, Councillor Whitehead, then perhaps you could specify exactly from what here you are taking forward and what you would like to disregard, and just propose an amendment to this motion, and so it can be voted through. Now, what I would also like to say is that I can accept that the Climate and Environment Task and Finishing Group is working hard, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some more detailed proposals come through. And I hope that one of those is going to be, on things that we can viably do. For example, putting electric vehicle charging points in the taxi ranks so that we can speed up the phasing out of petrol and diesel taxis in the very near future. And I just want to make a quick point as well about the financial disincentive, the spending of £1.5 million from the budget on this. Well, I think that it's quite small beer considering that we're investing £9 million, I think it is, in a property trading company, which is neither the remit or the purpose of council. What we're proposing here is adding value to the services that the council are supposed to be providing for our citizens. So I hope that you can consider that as well. Thank you very much.
Councillor Epignon.
There we go. Oops. Chair, I really want to speak up on behalf of Stowmarket because I'm heartily fed up of councillors running it down over on that side of the room. Stowmarket is a great town. Stowmarket is a great town, I'll have you know. I am a citizen of Stowmarket. I live in Stowmarket. I shop in Stowmarket. There are many things to recommend Stowmarket. Of course, Stowmarket, like every town up and down the country, has its problems, with online shopping and the like. And so does Bury, so does Ipswich. So there's no nirvana that says if you go in those two directions, you'll be saved. We are working very hard with our vision for posterity, developing the Museum of East Anglian Life to be a National Museum of Food. We've just launched an innovation hub by the station. We're redeveloping the Regal, and then we will have some electric charging points there, chaps and lasses. We have quite a successful football club that's developing very nicely, thank you very much. So, and we're developing the middle school for affordable housing. So we have a lot of good things going on in Stowmarket, and we could have more, and no one's denying that fact. So I would encourage everybody to look on the bright side. Our glass is half full, and Stowmarket is going places. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? So we can go back to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the proposed £1 million upfront capital funding to borrow against for our own house building, this really requires a lot more investigation. It is not obvious that the General Fund can contribute to the HRA stock in this way. But officers are exploring whether the General Fund can legally fund the additionality that would make new council housing carbon zero. Also, carbon zero is not required as part of our planning policy, and we cannot require an approach where all new housing is carbon neutral. Also, when it comes to taxes, you mentioned taxes. We don't actually have any taxes that are electric. and we only have 2 private hire vehicles that are electric. So installing major infrastructure in terms of electric vehicle charging for specifically for taxis in advance of the requirement is clearly a waste of our taxpayers' money. There seems to be some sort of misunderstanding. We are not arguing against these proposals because we disagree with them. We are arguing against them because we are already doing some of this stuff and scoping it, and our officers are working their little socks off to get all this information together. And to have, after all the discussions that we've had, to have these proposals come forward, undermining the work of the task force and negating all the goodwill that has been generated to date between this side of the chamber and the opposition teams, I find really, really distressing, because it goes against everything that our residents should be expecting from us.
Well done.
Thank you. I'd just like to clear up a little misunderstanding which 2 people on the other side of the room seem to have got about our item number 1. We are not talking about HRA-funded council houses. We are talking about market homes, in which case we are perfectly within our rights to use our general fund to provide market housing. We're not talking about HRA. We're not talking about transfer. And I think the other point that Councillor Moore has just made up about, just spoken about, where does this £1.5 million upfront cost come from, and our general fund can't do that. I'm sorry, we still have that 9.2 million in our reserves. That's where the money's coming from. It's not coming out of our general budget that is required for other things. There's one other misunderstanding that perhaps I've got, in that I thought that the proposal, Councillor Whitehead's original proposal, talked about 500,000 for the actions from the task group, and then Councillor Caston said it was more than that. So that's a little misunderstanding I've got, maybe.
Councillor Eburn, do you want to wrap this up? Well, not wrap it up. You know what I'm saying.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, I just want to clear up a few points that various members have made. Councillor Brewster, I think you were referring to a previous version of the amendment about taxi licensing. That's not included in this point. And on the EV policy, the EV points within the corporate outputs, that refers to policy, not actually action of putting points in place. Councillor Mansell's mentioned about market homes. And Councillor Richardson, you mentioned about what's in it for architects. Well, we've spoken to architects about the plan, and they think the kudos of providing those plans would be just fantastic and would add a good string to their bow. So we have actually talked to people. But firstly, I don't want to distress Councillor Morley, because I think that what we've done here tonight and what we've seen from this debate, I mean, this has been fantastic. Look at the discussions that we've been having, and what happens when we have kind of good, ambitious, forward-thinking ideas put forward that have been planned out, that have got, we've had legal look at them, we've had finance look at them. I mean, it's great to see so much debate. And what we really need to do is actually do this. You know, we're not waiting for technology. We're not looking at long-term strategy. I think someone's talked about doing some more research. You know, let's just do some of this, and let's just get it into the main part of the budget and do it. With regards to kind of how we have worked together, some ideas have gone forward into the budget and into the corporate outputs, and these are some ones which we have also been working up with officers and with members, which can equally go into the budget and actually really move forward our district. I like Stowmarket, I shop in Stowmarket, but what we're saying is about how we're improving, how we want to get more people in there and not people going to different towns in Ipswich and Bury. And actually, all we want to do is improve the quality of life for our residents and businesses, help future-proof our district and put forward well thought out, ambitious proposals. And I really would commend this to all of you here. And I'd just like to reiterate, it's so fantastic to see so many contributions from everybody across the room. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Whitehead, do you want to reply? Would you like to?
No, I think in my introduction, where instead of saying no, I went into quite a lot of detail. I think I said all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, so in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.3, immediately after any vote is taken at a budget decision meeting of the Council, including any amendments, the names of the councillors who cast a vote for the decision or against the decision or who abstain from voting shall be recorded in the minutes of that meeting. And I will ask Jan Robinson to conduct this.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear, we're voting on the amendment. If you can answer me with for, against or abstain. Councillor Morrison.
For.
Councillor Brewster.
Against.
Councillor Byrne.
Against.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Caston.
Against.
Councillor Eburn.
For.
Councillor Eppingham. Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Flatman. Councillor Fleming.
Against.
Councillor Geek.
For.
Councillor Gould.
Against.
Councillor Guthrie.
Against.
Councillor Haddingham.
Against.
Councillor Hicks.
Against.
Councillor Humphreys.
Against.
Councillor Mansell.
For.
Councillor Mattison.
For.
Councillor Mellon.
For.
Councillor Mayer.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Muller.
Against.
Councillor Norris.
For.
Councillor Otten. Councillor Passmore.
Against.
Councillor Pratt.
For.
Councillor Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Scarf.
For.
Councillor Stringer.
For.
Councillor Turner.
For.
Councillor Warboys.
For.
Councillor Wellham.
For.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
Okay, thank you. So that was carried 16. Sorry. No, sorry.
So that was lost 17-16.
Yeah.
So we're going to return to the original motion for debate and start the debate again. So who would like to speak first? So are we going into questions? So this is questions to John. If you've got any. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think everybody wants a coffee break after that one, but well, perhaps not coffee, but anyway.
Something locally distilled.
My questions, if I may, the spend of the on paragraph 7.6, the spend of the 500,000 for the climate change. Could you confirm that spend is planned to be made in 2021? And secondly, with regards to the paragraph 8.14, there's no increased forecast at all for business rates over the next 4 years. Could you just explain this, please? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. In terms of the 500,000 we're allocating and putting in the budget for 2021, this will be spent as and when it comes forward. I've said it's a starter anyway, but to actually say I commit to spending the total between now and the end of March next year will depend on how it's all brought forward. But certainly, as far as I would be concerned, if it wasn't all spent next year, but there are still requirements, it would be carried forward. But the intention is that is £500,000 that should be needed, will be needed, and is the starting position for our work on climate change. And in terms of business rates, my understanding is at the moment the government's just basically indicated what business rates position will be through to the end of March 2021, but they're still in the process of redesigning, probably quite significantly, the business rate situation. So at the moment we just put in the same figure going forward because we don't know anything better. Is that right, Catherine? Yeah. Catherine's nodding. Yeah.
Is there any more questions for John, or should we move straight to debate? Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, directed at John, Councillor Whitehead. Is it your view that government introduced new homes bonus so that councils could stash it away? If all councils behaved in the same fashion, why would government not remove it?
Right, an interesting question. Councils basically have, I think, two sort of spending. There's sort of day-to-day stuff, what I call the normal running costs, and then the special costs, special projects, one-off transformation. I mean, most of the new homes bonus was originally put into this, what we call the transformation fund, and a lot of it was spent in terms of the working together process, and indeed moving from the two half-used high-energy sites in Baber and Mid Suffolk and moving down to sharing this public sector space here. So a lot of councils, I think, did have to use new homes bonus just to balance their books, as I said in my introduction before, because of the robust situation we've been in and continue to be in. We've been in a situation where we haven't had to use that for day-to-day spending. We've been able to use it for all sorts of projects, and I believe the fact the government are now taking it away suggests that it's not there for day-to-day spending.
Councillor Field.
Thank you. I think my question just got asked in almost identical words, so I won't go on.
Councillor Otten.
Yes, it's a question on paragraph 7.7 on your reserves, and then a statement there that says there is nothing about what is in the SIL pot, and I am very surprised at that. I would have thought that there should be at least some indication of the, quite frankly, enormous amount of money sitting in the SIL pot. And I'd also like to have some information. There have been 206 SIL exemptions, so can I be assured that the council is fulfilling its legal duty under the Self-Build and Custom House Building Act 2015 to maintain an up-to-date register of plots available for self-builders? I believe that this is a legal requirement, and I know this is possibly not the only council that is failing to provide that list. Is on the capital programme. Disabled facilities grants, I know, and I'm pleased actually that this council has adopted a much more can-do attitude to these, but either can you or the Cabinet Member for Housing assure us that the contract, which appears to be failing, is going to deliver much better in the future, and it will be looked at much more seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, well, to answer the three, I'll defer the third one actually to Councillor Flatman. But in terms of the SIL, and in the table shown there, I think it's important that we show the total reserves as a subtotal and then show SIL separately, because that really is money that's collected from our developers to use specifically for community infrastructure and goes through a very specific process. I mean, to be quite frank, I think I personally would, if I could, would actually just keep it totally out of this report, because to me it is just a completely separate thing. But the reality is, I think there's a paper coming to Cabinet in March, and yet another round of spend, and we were told at the start that actually the amount of SIL money raised would probably be inadequate for the total amount of infrastructure needed, so it will all be spent. But at this stage, particularly for next year, we just can't crystal ball gaze and put a real number in there, but it will be spent as the bids come in.
Well, actually, I'm really sorry to hear you say that you wouldn't even want to have it included. This is money that is being put aside for the public, as a result, in many cases, enormous planning applications, and therefore I think they have a right as a public to know how much is sitting there in order for them to access that, to help them through some quite traumatic situations.
Well, sorry if I'm confused. It is so clearly separate and ring-fenced that to me it is its own subject. So I'm not saying it should be hidden away. It should be basically... it's just not a reserve that really fits that. Sorry, I've been passing out as well, saying it is in a public domain online anyway. In terms of the still exemptions and the question you raised there, which is quite a technical question, I think I might refer that to an officer if I may, if there's a relevant officer present who could answer that. I mean, I assume we're compliant, but I would certainly hope so, but I'd prefer an officer to say that rather than myself.
Outside the meeting.
We're going to take this out, another time outside the meeting. Okay. I've got Councillor Byrne. Do you want to ask a question? Sorry, John. Back, Councillor Patman.
Thank you, Councillor Otten. As you know, the adaptation grant has just been changed. We've upped it to 7,000 non-means and up to 40,000 means tested, but not for children. So people needing wet rooms, etc. You're quite right, it's up for renewal, that contract, and we're looking at it very closely. I can't say any more than that because it's not out in the public domain yet.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to try and assist
Okay, well then,
Councillor
sit down.
Whitehead in answering the questions about SIL, but
okay, cool.
if you're satisfied to take it out, that's fine.
Are there any other questions for Councillor Whitehead? Councillor Carter.
I'll press the button. My dance moves have made me move a bit further away from my desk than intended. Right, sorry. This is also regards to the Disabled Adaptation Fund, and I just wanted some reassurance regarding the delays being faced by that. I didn't know if you were aware that this fund has been delayed due to the occupational therapist the wait being up to 2 years. They are saying part of that, haven't spoken to occupational therapists, but they're actually saying that part of that wait is actually struggling with communication with our officers. I do have to declare an interest. I am also on the waiting list for the past year to have a fund. Can we be reassured that this is being addressed? Especially as I believe it was 4 years ago we were talking about employing our own occupational therapist to address this, and has yet have done nothing to do so.
Councillor Fleming, do you want to answer this? Or have you got a question? Yes, okay.
I would like to say, Councillor, that in a different capacity as Chair of Health Scrutiny, if I'd like to see you afterwards or communicate with you, because that's simply not good enough. I would like to make sure that you get the disabled support that you need. There's absolutely no reason why you should experience a delay like this. There are some problems with the delivery of the disabled facilities grants that the county council and the districts are working on, and I think we're going to see some fundamental changes to the delivery of that service in the near future. There have been problems with the contractor delivering it, and I make no apologies for that. But I would like to speak to you afterwards about your particular situation.
So we're going to move to debate. Who would like to begin the debate? Councillor Hicks.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And Budget Day, I've said on, I think, about 6 different occasions, is a time really across the whole of the country when all councillors come together, and it's when we need to really reflect on the enormous responsibility that we have all been given by the residents of Mid Suffolk, particularly today. Because now we decide the future direction of this authority for the coming year, and that is a really important and significant time. And we also need to determine how we're going to spend our budget. Now, we need to reflect, I think, that our party, the Conservative Party, has just been returned to government with a huge majority. And why is that? Because we have a track record of managing the economy well. We have a track record of putting together a detailed, a structured, a deliverable, and a sustainable budget. You have, and I've said those key lines before, only a few weeks ago. But we did win a huge majority because we have a track record. I don't believe there is more than one member of the Greens in Parliament. Could you let me finish my speech and be polite? Thank you. Now, the papers before us are very clear. Over the years since 2011 to 2020, this council has achieved cumulative savings of just under £31 million. And that is through shared services, through efficiencies, through better use of technology, and maximising commercial opportunities. And we should be proud that we have achieved that. That is a great accomplishment. And that is because we're a well-run council and a prudent council. And that, along with a forecast of 2.8 million identified for 2021, mean we're in a good position. But we must not be complacent. We do not know and cannot know what lies ahead. But this authority has always shown it can adapt. And I have no doubt with a Conservative administration, it will continue to do so in the future. And I'm delighted to see the principles that are laid out on page 43 of our papers about reducing our costs, increasing our income, providing better and best value, increasing social value, and providing a better service for our residents, and reducing administration costs without compromising service. Madam Chairman, I'd like to conclude by asking members to support this budget, because it focuses on the needs of our residents, and I'm really glad that we have set aside funding to start the delivery on the climate change emergency. This budget is well considered, it's sustainable, and it focuses on the needs of our residents, and I hope you'll all support it. Thank you.
Councillor Fleming.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. I too am pleased to support this general fund budget this evening. It reflects a prudent and principled approach to managing our, i.e. the Mid Suffolk Public's money. And we should not forget that it is their money that is entrusted to us. It's not ours. As Councillor Hicks has mentioned, I take the principles that this council has adopted seriously, particularly providing service to our customers and including social and environmental value in everything we do. For the first time, this budget anticipates investment targeted directly to climate change and biodiversity. £500,000, at least in this particular budget, is earmarked from reserves, as we've already pointed out. Exactly what projects will be identified as beneficiaries of this money will come out through the task force work. This work has to assess the large number of possibilities that have been put before us, prioritise and put our resources to where they will be most effectively used. We're going to be hearing some initial reports about where those priorities lie this March, and we will be bringing a formal report to Cabinet on the climate change aspects of the work in April. We expect to bring
the biodiversity elements, which are also part of our terms of reference, into this work on an ongoing basis. The task force is not going to stop its work in April. It will need funding and commitment, as I see it, in the foreseeable future. I would add, this important budget marks the beginning of a new approach to direct investment in the environment. We haven't seen this before. This is an important first step, and one which I believe is supported by most of our Mid Suffolk residents. Therefore, I commend and support this budget this evening.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. Like some of my friends and colleagues opposite, I find myself getting up to say the same thing year after year, but I won't let that stop me. Firstly, members opposite have referred about not being complacent. Well, I don't want us to be complacent. I would like us to be delivering a really strong, forward-thinking budget for all of our residents. People have told us, our communities have told us, that they want planning resolved in their communities. They want support from this district. They want to be able to future-proof their homes for their children and their grandchildren. And I don't feel that this budget goes far enough in terms of meeting those needs of our residents. And as such, I will not be supporting this budget today. We have large sums set aside, which I think is a quote from one of my colleagues opposite, 9.235 million at the moment, that we are stockpiling, and we should be spending on some initiatives to really ensure that we can future-proof Mid Suffolk for all residents and businesses. So I would like to see us actually utilising this funding. Every year we talk about new homes bonus and money going into reserves, and it continues to sit there. We need to get that money out, working hard for our residents and businesses, and this budget does not go far enough to meet that. And finally, Chair, I wouldn't want to disappoint your one independent member of the administration by being labelled a Conservative, so it's just to not to leave him out of the loop here, reassure him that he's not a Conservative. But anyway, on that note, I would like. I wish that more of our ideas could be taken forward, and I do look forward to working with the administration to do that, and welcome meetings at the earliest opportunity to take some of those ideas forward. But at the moment, I feel we're not going far enough in this budget, and there's so much more that we could be doing. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's interesting. The high competence of Conservative administrations to be admired. Black Monday was the thing that was passing across my mind. I seem to remember that being moderately disastrous. In fact, you got to the point where you wondered whether you'd ever get back in power again, as I remember it. But that's aside from this area here. This year we've tried, with partial success, some cross-party discussion and agreement, and we obviously welcome that. I think it was a good experience, despite tonight's debate. Do we still have issues that we need to bring to your attention in a formal setting? I think, unfortunately, perhaps the answer is yes. We still do not agree with borrowing some 50 million to invest in high street properties and car dealership premises. It's currently yielding a good return. But those areas of the economy are in increasing trouble, and we think the downside risk is too high. Is the point at which we differ, we will know. The second point, and I'll stick to just a couple, is are we doing enough to address our climate emergency declaration? Are there plans in place to do better than we're doing now? Should there be a clearer way forward in this budget? And I think there's just to stick to a couple of illustrations. the budget could prepare the way for replacement waste vehicles that use carbon-free fuel, electricity from renewable sources. It actually has got, in the advanced years, a figure for such replacement. But do you show the investment in a trial, perhaps, and sufficient funds for the high cost of batteries? Currently, perhaps 300k a vehicle. In the future, 30k by the time we replace. And I haven't seen those figures. I'm quite aware that we have an environment change working party, but the figures are not in the budget. Unless you get them there, you can't use them. The second thing I had was really work on our leisure centres. We're doing some excellent work on a new contracts, which will have a lot of benefits as we see them now. It's a good long-term deal to improve people's fitness. But does the refurbishment address the issue of CO2 generation? Is there some cunning plan? Not one that we've seen, there may be, but not one we've seen. Should the cost of ground source heat, for instance, investigation appear now and the capital cost in maybe a year or two? I don't see anything of that type. I won't go on, it's getting late. I think, I'd sum this up, it's a good try. It could be a lot more ambitious, so somewhat regrettably, we won't be supporting it.
Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. I listened with interest to Councillor Hicks's views, and I'd like to apologise to him for my audible astonishment. I'd also like to point out that all mainstream economic opinion has challenged the Conservative policy on austerity. Shrinking the economy further when in a recession, as the Conservatives did from 2010 onwards, is economically illiterate and clearly ideologically driven. Also, putting our taxpayers' money into 90% reserves for a rainy day when there is no more rainy day than now is also ideologically driven. We have known since the Beveridge Report in 1942, if you look up the chapter called The Problem of Rent, that prosperity has a firm footing only if there is sufficient housing. You will also all know from the Redfern Review, which I hope you're all familiar with, that there is a housing surplus in this country. The reason that we have a housing crisis is that our housing stock is not spread equally. It is hoarded by those who own several houses and rent them out. The only way to undercut this and to stop the hemorrhage of public money to private landlords is to bring more housing back into social rent as a temporary measure on the step to more owner occupation, which I'm sure many of all of us would agree is wanted by most of our residents. And this process would speed up if zero carbon measures allowed more money to be spent on saving for the deposit rather than heating your house.
Could you try again?
There is no more dangerous argument than running a country is like running a household, something which the Conservative national governments trot out over and over again. Sadly, this economic misprudence seems to have spread to this administration, so I cannot support this budget and would urge the rest of you to think hard about what you're doing.
Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go into anything to do with national politics. We really shouldn't do that at a district council. I know it's really difficult. It's very difficult to realise we're representing a very rural part of the country where we're in a glass edifice in a large town. But I can certainly overcome that. To trot out about what's happened at a general election, what the government is doing, is frankly irrelevant. Look at what's in this chamber. Look at what the people delivered to this chamber. They delivered a council of almost equal proportion here. Well, look at it. Look at it. It's almost equally split. Therefore, our proposal of trying to run a joint administration, it's actually quite good to see that some of the measures that we would have brought forward as a minimum, have been taken account of and actually put into some of the budget. However, some of the measures aren't in there, and neither are there measures to address some of those burning desires of the people that elect us. Acutely aware that someone in this chamber said that you shouldn't put out negatives without at least 5 positives. I can't quite find 5, but one positive. I congratulate John Whitehead as being someone in the Conservatives in charge of the budget that's actually able to deliver a budget. Well done for that. Surviving that long is brilliant. Also want to just sort of mention some of the things that aren't in here that we would like to have been in here. We would have quite liked to have gone far further, and others are, and they're reaping those rewards. This hook-up about a few charging points in Stowmarket is a real symptom of where we're getting bogged down. Go to Dundee. You can only licence a zero-emission taxi in Dundee, and they've already built the solar-powered battery storage and charging point for all of those taxi drivers. Huge resistance to it at the start, but they took a strategic approach, clear vision of how to get to where they wanted to go, and they've got there. And are the public moaning? No, they think it's absolutely brilliant. And the taxi drivers think it's brilliant because they have free fuel for their cars while they're waiting for their next fare. That's a visionary approach, and we ought to adapt it for ourselves, particularly as we have one of the best charging company manufacturers in our largest town. Yet we have no ongoing rapport with them. They're not involved in any of the things that we're doing. We really need to do better. We've got the resources here to do that, and we should be improving on that. One of the biggest complaints I certainly get is not about my political ambitions. It's about the design of our houses. And if we're completely comfortable with what the national builders elect to give us, that's the same as everywhere else in the country, stay as you are. But the idea of the competition thing that you decided not to agree to put in your budget, I think you need to look at again seriously, because
you've had 3 minutes now.
Thank you. I'm now wrapping up. Our residents want something that's of us and not just given to us. So I'm really disappointed that you disagreed with that, but it will not stop me promoting that argument further. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm only going to be brief, you'll be pleased to know. Obviously, this is the first budget speech that I've participated in, and I have to say I think this budget adopts exactly the right approach. It is keeping council tax as low as feasibly possible while continuing to deliver high-quality public services and ensuring that we invest in our future. I think it's important to look at these figures and take them into perspective. What we are proposing is a rise of 1.66%, which sits significantly below the growth in average earnings, which sits at 2.9% as of the third quarter of this financial year, and the rate of inflation, which is 1.8% as of last month. I think it's important that we recognise that what we are proposing is a very modest increase in council tax, because we should remember and recognise that across the country, local government finances are particularly challenged. And I think that's why it's especially important that we are continuing to sustain, or planning to sustain, a balanced budget over the medium term, over the next 4 years, without the need to rely on the new homes bonus. So I think on the whole, this is a budget that recognises the challenges that we face across the district, that responds to those challenges whilst maintaining this Conservative and independent administration's reputation for the responsible management of our finances. And for that reason, I would commend this budget to the Council and encourage all councillors to vote in favour of it.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Sorry. Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to support this. Mainly because a lot of it is referred to as ours being focused on climate change and how it's been dealt with by the Environmental Forum and how we should just let them get on with it. Well, I do kind of feel concerned that we are trying to pigeonhole climate change and trying to, under the misinformed opinion that we can throw a little bit of money at it and we can train it to dance and do little tricks because, here you go, here's a little bit, I'm taking what I want. We have no say over what climate change does to us. We can only act now and hope we have done enough. We can't do now and say we're going to get this back from it. And I do wonder how much we are focusing on leisure, housing, business. Wonderful, great. How much housing, how much business, how much leisure will there be on a dead planet? We only have now to act. This is the budget for the next 4 years, and it's meant to be, well, 1 year. Okay, 1 year. 1 year when we're supposed to be acting now. We were told to act now by the IPCC 2 years ago. Where's the action? We're talking about it, we're saying it's going to get done, we're going to throw some money at it. Wonderful. Where's the action? So I'm afraid I can't support this. You can turn me off again now.
Councillor Whitehead, do you want to round this up?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm actually very proud of the budget that's been brought forward today, and I think it is a budget for the medium term, continue with our strengths, and at the same time it recognises the climate change, but I'm conscious of time, so all I would say to all members here is that I hope you will support our budget. Thank you.
Okay, we will again take the recorded vote, which Dan is going to do.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, again, this is for the full budget recommendation, so if you can answer for, against or abstain. Councillor Morrison?
Against.
Councillor Brewster?
For.
Councillor Byrne? For. Councillor Carter?
Against.
Councillor Caston?
For.
Councillor Eburn?
Against.
Councillor Eppinon?
For.
Councillor Field? Councillor Flatman?
For.
Councillor Fleming?
For.
Councillor Geek?
Against.
Councillor Gould?
For.
Councillor Guthrie? Councillor Haddingham?
For.
Councillor Hicks?
For.
Councillor Humphreys?
For.
Councillor Mansell?
Against.
Councillor Mattison?
Against.
Councillor Mellon? Councillor Mayor?
For.
Councillor Morley?
For.
Councillor Muller?
For.
Councillor Norris?
Against.
Councillor Otten? Councillor Passmore?
For.
Councillor Pratt?
Against.
Councillor Richardson?
For.
Councillor Scarf? Councillor Stringer?
Against.
Councillor Turner? Councillor Warboys?
Against.
Councillor Wellham?
Against.
Councillor Whitehead?
So that is carried. So moving on to agenda item 11, MC 19/39, the Housing Revenue Account, Budget and Longer Term Outlook. I would like to invite Councillor Whitehead again to introduce this paper and move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I shall keep this introduction below 5 minutes. I'll do my best. The HRA has been through a challenging period, and its budget for the year 2021 has a deficit of 564,000 funded from reserves. I do believe, however, that it is important to recognise there have been many positive developments and improvements commenced during this current year, arising from a fundamental review of the housing services that was undertaken in 2019-20. This had identified savings, efficiencies and income-generating opportunities to achieve a sustainable business plan for the future. These achievements and identified opportunities are set out in detail in sections 7 and 8 of the report. Turning now to some of the details included within the report recommendations, from April 20, we are now allowed to increase council house rents by Consumer Price Index plus 1%, which works out at 2.7% increase. Members will be aware that over the past 4 years, the government's imposed in every one of those years a 1% rent reduction, which means the council house, which typically paid £80 a week rent, over the last 4 years and reductions came into force, and now this 2.7% increase, that 8% rent will now be £78.92. So all tenants will therefore still be paying less rent for the same property in April 20 than they were in April 15. We're maintaining garage rents at the same levels as 1920, but we are proposing to increase sheltered housing services charges by £2 a week. I do understand members' concerns as raised at Cabinet about this increase, and as a follow-up I asked the finance team for more analysis to be done. That's been done, and it shows that a £2 increase goes less than halfway to eliminate the deficit. Now, in an ideal world there would be no deficit and no cross-subsidy, and accordingly £2 a week is the minimum amount of the increase that we can recommend this year, although I'm anticipating more work can be done in this area in 2021 to see what cost savings may be achievable. Also, following on for utility cost increases, we're proposing to increase sheltered housing utility charges by 5%, or 62 pence a week. The HRA budget includes a marked increase in our new build and acquisition programme. The capital costs are shown in Appendix A, and in the next 4 years, 44.2 million will be spent on new housing. Working with ICNI, this will equate to 185 affordable homes and 85 shared ownership homes, with major sites being developed in Needham Market and Stowe Market middle school sites. This is an ambitious programme, but I would want members to understand this is not the end of our ambitions for house building, merely the start. Borrowing levels are shown in the graph in paragraph 6, which shows that after peak borrowings in 22-23, they fall away quite steadily. And of course, this supports our current year's HRR budget, which has a 30-year business plan produced on a rolling basis to ensure its sustainability. Housing is a specialist area of the council, therefore I'm pleased to see that Gavin Fisk, our AD for housing, my housing cabinet colleague, Councillor Flatman, and our finance team are here to assist me in any questions arising on the report. I'd like to move the recommendations set out in paragraph 3 and ask my colleague, Councillor Flatman, if she's happy to second them. Thank you.
Very happy to second the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll move into questions. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Whitehead? Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask about the sheltered housing service charge. I don't believe this is the first year that it has been increased by a similar amount. My memories, and I haven't checked the data, but I'm pretty sure we have increased it, the last couple of years, certainly last year as well. And I know that we have changed our sheltered scheme, and I'd just like to know what people actually get for their sheltered housing service that they're paying more per week for.
So certainly looking back over the last few years, I've seen times when it's been frozen. I've seen a time when I think it went up by £4 a week. And I think to fully eliminate that deficit, we'd have to increase the charges by £4.88, which we're not proposing. We're sticking it at £2. But in terms of the details behind the sheltered housing provisions, I'd like to ask Gavin to speak on that, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to service charges, they're an accumulation of a whole variety of utilities, charges for the sheltered housing service, such as the scheme manager, grounds maintenance, whole range of services that are provided. We are intending to conduct a review of the sheltered housing service this year, and that will include those charges that residents have to pay.
Councillor Eburn, do you have a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. I have two, if I may. Following on from the previous question, could I ask what we are doing to keep utility bills low for those in sheltered housing services? Because it seems that if that £2 a week is in reality £4.88, effectively what are we doing to get that amount down? And secondly, just with regards to the investment within our own social housing, on paragraph 6.3, where we refer to the debt cap for housing, so the debt cap's been removed, and we are we're currently able to borrow more, but that currently we're not looking to do that on a long-term basis, and by long-term I mean 50 years long-term. So I'd just like to ask, are there any plans to investigate borrowing over a longer period of time in order to actually boost up our social housing programme? Thank you, Chair.
I'll answer your second question first, if I may. And my actually handwritten notes here actually say that I wouldn't want members to feel that this first initial investment programme is the end of our ambitious programme for housing, because you see it does fall away quite drastically. But step by step is what we're doing. So we'll bring back another budget next year for the HRA, another rolling 30-year business plan, and the year after that. And I'm quite confident that house building will be going on for the foreseeable future. In terms of your question, I feel your first question, perhaps there was a little bit of a misunderstanding between utility bills and sheltered service charges, but again, if Gavin could just answer that.
Thank you. With respect to utility charges, they're managed by Veritas. We've based the costs on actual statements that we've received. In relation to utilities, obviously we have a number of shelter schemes across the districts. Some of those have the benefit of solar PV, and what we do is we look at the totality of the utility costs and then proportion that out across sheltered housing to support reducing that level to the lowest level for everyone concerned. And we are also in the process, and there's work going on currently to install new central heating systems through the use of ground source heat pumps within some Mid Suffolk schemes at the moment to reduce the overall costs and improve the efficiencies.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I'm always concerned being seen on camera standing up in case DWP find out I actually can stand. But anyway, I did wonder regarding the further charges on the sheltered housing. Is that possibly a fee for the advantages of taking their mobility scooters away, or is that a completely different issue? Just wonder.
Sorry, in terms of mobility scooter storage, we are obviously got an active programme of reducing the number of mobility scooters that are stored in flats or in communal areas because of the fire risk problem that they pose. So therefore we are investing in our stock and investing in scooter storage where suitable within our schemes.
Councillor Field, do you have a question?
Yes, just about the level of rents. The last time, my recollection, we put up rents by CPI plus 1%. We were told, don't worry about it, most people, or 50% of our clients, get that from housing benefit. And my interpretation was the government saw us do that and told us to put rents down for 4 years. Have you got any assurances that that is not exactly what's going to happen again if we go right to the limit of our allowance?
No, I'm not going to second guess what the government's position is, particularly with the new Chancellor just arriving. But I still think it's good news that 5 years down the line, from April 15, our tenants are paying less than they were 5 years ago. And we can only build our 30-year plans based on what we know at the moment, and we will find out in due course if things change.
Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. Sheltered housing service charges. Is it not the case that as more and more of our sheltered units become de-sheltered, we've got a standard sort of, we're paying for the management of the sheltered units. As we have fewer and fewer sheltered units, the cost per sheltered unit goes up. Is that the reason why you're now seeking to increase the service charges?
No, it's not. The other residents in those sheltered accommodations are actually paying higher for their rental, and that's why it's under review. So in a lot of our housing, where there's sheltered places, they're not being taken up. So ordinary people are renting those places. So they have to pay higher because there is a sheltered accommodation. That's why it's under review.
Councillor Carter, you've got another question?
Just regarding a slight issue with the word ordinary people as opposed to people in sheltered housing. I
do beg your pardon.
Councillor Rome, did you have another question?
I just wanted a bit more clarification. Councillor Flatman said in the de-sheltered units within an area of sheltered and de-sheltered, the people in the de-sheltered are paying more. Are they paying more for their rent, or are they paying more for their service charges, or are they paying more for both?
Yeah, Gavin, would you like to answer that one?
So obviously, both councils, Mid Suffolk, a few years ago, made the decision to, following a sheltered housing review, to de-designate some of its units or some of its schemes, which was based particularly on demand. Where those units have been de-designated, it's a case that someone might move in and not require the services of the sheltered housing officer. So therefore, they don't pay for that service. But obviously, as demand for that service falls, then so does the cost of that service. So it is proportionate in that respect. Just looking at some of the things that make up those service charges, it will include repair work to communal areas. It will include window cleaning. It will include things like Legionella testing, which we've invested in, ensuring that our schemes are safe. As well as some of the fire risk assessment works that have been completed this year as a result of Grenfell and the Hackett review, in terms of the additional investment that we've put into ensuring that those sites are safe for our residents.
So we'll move straight to the debate. Who would like to speak? Or should we go straight to the vote? Okay, Penny. Okay.
Yes, I mean, it is the issue about sheltered housing and the charges. Where they have now been de-sheltered, they obviously don't have any access to the alarm system. Consequently, not only now going to be increase their rents, they are now being forced to actually buy or join a privately run alarm system, for example, maybe by Flagship or some other organisation, at their own expense. And always we get the argument, and I find it not very pleasant actually, the argument that, well, the majority of these people are actually on some sort of housing benefit. Listen, those come out of the public purse, whichever way you look at it, and I don't consider that to be a correct argument for doing so. So I can't support this yet again.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn?
Thank you very much, Chair. I too have got a particular issue with the sheltered housing service charges, and I think we should be doing a lot more to try to reduce that, and to have I've asked previously if that could be spread over a longer period of time in terms of any increases, and to give the council, it seems we're struggling to find how to actually get that lower and eliminate some of that. And so maybe if it was spread over a longer period of time, we could have that time to look at that and investigate that further. I'm also concerned about right to buy. I'm very pleased actually that right to buy sales are much lower than projected, than we thought they would be. But I do worry about how that affects the overall business plan of the HRA account. And, while personally I don't support right to buy as it is, I think social housing should be built for social housing and remain that way in perpetuity. But I would like to see us doing a lot more work on how that works across the business plan. And thirdly, actually, as I mentioned in my questions, see greater investment. I appreciate we have started finally to build our own housing stock again, but I would like to see a programme over a much longer time frame. We should be looking at kind of a mortgage, as it were, of 50 years plus here, and in terms of actually being able to deliver for our residents, and I don't really feel that this current plan does that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mansell?
Thank you. I tend to agree with much of, in fact, nearly all of what my colleague Councillor Eburn has just said. I feel uncomfortable about the the increase in the payments needed for the sheltered housing units, because I think they may be the people who are least able to afford the increase. And I too think that our capital programme is unambitious. It's not ambitious enough. Well, for the last few years, I mean, in fact, ever since I've been on the council and had any knowledge of what goes on in housing, for which I knew nothing before I started, we've gone on and on about the debt cap and the fact that we weren't allowed to borrow money. And now this debt cap, you know, it's applauded that it's now been removed. And yet I don't think we're taking full advantage of the fact that it's been removed. And I think, you know, I agree with Councillor Eburn, we should be looking at a more long-term project of borrowing money to invest in our capital programme of capital properties.
Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to give you an illustration of probably an unintended consequence of some of the savings made on the HRA income. I note that we've removed the decorating vouchers for new tenants, saving £3,000, and also the removal of decorating grants for tenants that have had their homes rewired. I wonder if you're aware, I'm a charity trustee within a charity in Stowmarket, and this is something I raised at Scrutiny when this came forward. By removing those vouchers, the unintended consequence is that some of those tenants have now come to the trust, the charity, for assistance with the cost of painting their property. And we are already facing applications from tenants of this authority for help towards the painting costs. We only help those who are particularly vulnerable in Stowmarket, and I wondered sometimes whether we give enough thought to the unintended consequences of an action that we take here at this authority. And I would just make a plea that in future years, when we look at savings that can be made by the HRA account, that we look very carefully at some of those things in future before we actually implement them, because it has a real cost to the most vulnerable people in our community.
Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to agree with some fellow councillors that we really do need a much more, we need to be much more ambitious in respect of building our own council houses. But also, I want to speak to the service charges. £30,000 is very little compared with the big jam jar we've got over £9 million in. But £2 a week makes a heck of a lot of difference to the quality of life of some of our most vulnerable people who are having to pay that increase.
I'm sorry, Councillor Masson.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering whether the proposers and the Chair might agree to take in point 3.5 and 3.6 as a separate vote to give us the opportunity of actually voting for something.
Yes, I just did suddenly have a brainwave. I did wonder, should I have declared an interest being one of the only councillors live here to be actually living in a council house owned by Mid Suffolk Council? And I wish I had known about the fund for the wallpaper paint. It would have been quite useful for me last year.
Chairman, if I could just clarify, that's covered by your dispensation, Councillor Carter.
Going to sort out about splitting the points up. Right here, do you want to just come back and sort of round up?
Well, in my introduction, I just said that accordingly, £2 per week is a minimum amount of increase that we can recommend this year. So whether it's taken separately or not, I mean, I would hope that all these clauses are agreed. We could take more time and have two votes if that's the will of the council. Yeah.
So we're going to take the recommendations 3.5 and 3.6 first. I can't even see where John's gone. Anyway, we need to move on because time is marching. So we're going to put those to the vote now, and it's a recorded one. So Jan is going to call everyone else. So this is just 3.5 and 3.6. Happy with this? Yeah, we're taking these two separately, and then we'll take the rest all together.
So, okay, councillors, so we're going to be taking 3.5 and 3.6. So if you can ask if you're for, against or abstain.
John asked for, if two of them could be taken separately.
So you are voting on that sheltered housing service charges be increased by £2 per week to reduce the subsidy by 30k, and that sheltered housing utility charges be increased by 5%, an average of 0.62 increase per week. So those are the two we're going to take now. So if you can say for, against or abstain. Councillor Morrison.
Against.
Councillor Brewster.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Caston.
For.
Councillor Eburn.
Against.
Councillor Epignon.
Against.
Councillor Field. You can't change it, I'm sorry, Councillor. Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor Flatman. For. Councillor Fleming.
For.
Councillor Geek.
Aye.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Guthrie.
For.
Councillor Haddingham.
For.
Councillor Hicks.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Mansell.
Against.
Councillor Mattison.
Against.
Councillor Mellon.
Against.
Councillor Mayer.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Muller.
For.
Councillor Norris.
Against.
Councillor Otten. Councillor Passmore. Councillor Pratt.
Against.
Councillor Richardson.
For.
Councillor Scarf. Councillor Stringer.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Warboys.
Against.
Councillor Wellham.
Against.
Councillor Whitehead.
For.
Okay, so, and
Well,
Chair,
my casting vote goes with the 4, and that was a big waste of time. Anyway, so we'll move on to the other recommendations.
They want to vote in favour of the rest.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Right, I'm tired, it's getting late. Right, so we're going to go with the other recommendations on block, and Jan's going to call out again.
Okay. Councillor Morrison.
Against.
Councillor Brewster.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Caston.
For.
Councillor Eburn.
For.
Councillor Epignon. Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Flatman.
For.
Councillor Fleming.
For.
Councillor Geek.
Against.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Guthrie.
For.
Councillor Haddingham.
For.
Councillor Hicks.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Mansell.
Against.
Councillor Mattison.
For.
Councillor Mellon.
Abstain.
Councillor Mayer.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Muller.
For.
Councillor Norris. Councillor Otten. Councillor Passmore.
For.
Councillor Pratt.
Against.
Councillor Richardson.
For.
Councillor Scarf. Councillor Stringer.
For.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Warboys.
For.
Councillor Wellham.
Against.
Councillor Whitehead.
For.
That is carried. So that is carried. Moving on to, hang on, first of all, Jan has got something to say.
To you in a minute.
Do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
Chair, if you don't mind, I'll take this point while Jan is adding up the numbers on the votes. I just want to bring to your attention, Chair, and to the Chamber's attention, Council Procedure Rule 9, which is the guillotine rule, which means that this meeting has to be called to a halt at 8:30. At that point, any business which is currently in progress will need to proceed immediately to a vote, and then the Council can choose, if it wishes, to hold another vote to extend the meeting or to adjourn the business to an alternative date. I would suggest that the council does need to deal with the Gateway 14 item this evening. However, Chair, you could choose to defer the other items. Thank you.
This is the answer to Penny's question about the number of the votes.
Chair, so the vote... Chair, the voting on the last item was 23 for, 9 against and 1 abstention.
So we're just, for now, we're just going to move to item 16, the resolution to exclude the public, because we want to get the Gateway 14 thing done first, okay? So, sorry.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. We just need to be careful here. If you move to the Gateway 14 item now and you go into 8:30, you will have to cease the debate immediately at 8:30. So I would encourage actually a member of the council to put a motion to extend the meeting first, have that seconded and voted upon, and then we can continue with the business in that manner.
Okay, Councillor Hicks.
Due to the fact that all business tonight is urgent, I would propose that we extend the meeting as long as necessary.
Got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Caston.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
So we need a vote. Those in favour? That's carried. We're still going to move to item 16 because we have a couple of directors here and we don't want to keep them here all night while we discuss stuff. So if that's okay with everyone, pretty much, can I get some nods? Any nods at all? Thanks, Matthew. So we're going to move to item 16, the resolution to exclude the public. So am I reading that up? Yes. Under section 100 brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public being excluded from the meeting for items 17 and 18 on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act in the paragraph registered against each item. Could I have a proposer? Thank you. Could I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. So those in favour of excluding the public? That's carried. Thanks very much. So moving on to item
Yeah, right, we're back in now.
Where did we get to? Right, so we're back to item 12. Let's move along quickly, people. Joint Capital Investment Treasury Management Strategies. I'd like to invite John to quickly introduce this paper and to move to the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This third report I'm introducing today is the Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management Strategy, which starts on page 123. The paper was presented to Cabinet earlier in the month and has already been subject to full scrutiny by Joint Audit and Standards Committee. It's a joint paper, as the strategies cover both Baber and Mid Suffolk, and indeed all the many tables within the report show the details for both Baber and Mid Suffolk. The report is produced annually, and there's been no significant changes in format this year. And of course, all the data contained within the report has been updated to reflect the latest capital expenditure, investment and borrowing, and the latest Treasury Management investment and borrowing positions of the Council. And the information is required to be set out in the SIP for Treasury Management Code of Practice and the Prudential Code, both of which were published in 2017, along with the MHCLG, I'm sure I can always remember what that stands for now, Investment Guidance, which was published in 2018. I've got a detailed explanation of what's behind all the various appendices, but I don't think anybody wants me to read those out, including myself. But if there are any questions on the individual reports, obviously we can answer those. A great deal of work has gone into preparation of these documents. I'd particularly like to acknowledge Sue Palmer for her dedication and diligence in this area. So I'll propose the list of recommendations set out in section 3 on pages 123 and 124. As I said earlier, it's been already scrutinised by Joint Audit and Standards, and I'd particularly like to draw the attention of members to recommendation 3.8, which is new for this year, and it arose from the Joint Audit and Standards Committee Scrutiny and was accepted by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I have a seconder? Thank you.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move to questions. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Whitehead? No, let's quickly move into the debate. You've got a question? Debate. Okay, Rachel, hit it off.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've just, with regards to Treasury investment strategies, particularly the joint investment strategy that's in Appendix B, as members in this room will know, that I have long since been against CIFCO as a vehicle for raising funds at Mid Suffolk. And indeed, many of our residents are. And in fact, that's one of the areas that, and it doesn't matter what political persuasion people are across the board, you know, people come to us saying that they really disagree with investing outside of the district, in shopping centres, in gyms, in what have we got, a BMW showroom somewhere, and so on. So I'm still very concerned that we are placing reliance on that. I'm happier to see projects such as Gateway 14 go forward, because that's within our, I feel that's much more within our remit and something that we can really look to promote ourselves and be proud of in our own district, but not for police outside. And like I say, this is the one area where we just get an awful lot of correspondence from residents, questions at parish council meetings and so on, that are really unhappy with how this council has progressed with CIFCO, and as such I can't support that investment strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else would like to speak? Councillor Stringer.
I just want to make a very small point about CIFCO and its investments. I won't be supporting this particular paper. And it's a bit of a moot point. If we were going to increase council tax by half the amount of the risk we're putting on the individuals of Mid Suffolk District Council, we'd have to have a referendum. But we can stack up that financial risk as part of the CIFCO on the individual citizens of Mid Suffolk, and we don't have to have that referendum. And I frankly think that's wrong. I have serious reservations about CIFCO, as Councillor Eburn alluded to. I still think we could make more money as a return by delivering on more of our corporate strategy values and more of our corporate objectives. And I also think we do it with significantly less risk, especially when I don't think there's been a year when the income from SIFCO has exceeded the amount we've underspent on our budget. So I think it's the wrong risk to deliver the answer to the wrong question.
Okay, let's go to the vote, people. So the recommendations are right here in your papers. All those in favour? All those against? 16. Any abstentions? No. Okay, that's carried. Item number 13, A, half-year report on Treasury Management. I'd like to invite Councillor Muller to introduce the report and to move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. The actual Audit and Standards Committee approved these recommendations at our meeting on the 27th of January. I have a paper here which I could read out, but in the interest of time, I would just recommend that the recommendations, as in on page 183, 3.1 and 3.2, they are for noting, and I would ask for a seconder, please.
Councillor Keston?
Very happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Matheson.
Yes, sorry, just the one. I just wanted to draw members and cabinet members particularly attention to section 11 on page 186, and I welcome the statement that all council activities will need to be reviewed as part of the work of the Climate Change Task Group. I wondered what additional resources are going to be provided to help them do that, because that is a very big job, actually.
Apparently that's not relevant to this report. So we're going to vote. All those in favour? It's for noting, yeah. That's carried. Item number 14, proposed changes to council meeting dates. I'd like to invite Councillor Morley to introduce the paper MC 19/41 and to move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Chair. These dates are being proposed. We've removed 2 dates. Normally, we do it on the fly, but all of our council business can be accommodated within these dates, and there is no necessity to have the other 2 in there. Thank you. I would like to ask for a seconder.
Thank you.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was going to ask, because in this report there wasn't a reason given for why there was going to be less meetings, but Councillor Morley has now given one, so thank you for that. I just worry that by reducing the amount of council meetings, we're effectively reducing the democratic deficit in this. There's becoming more of a democratic deficit in this district, and particularly that there aren't any opportunities to meet outside of this building and actually take the council out to the residents and perhaps meet in the Blackbourne or the one of the great places we've got in Stowmarket, and just hold council meetings there rather than be beholden to timings and things of when this chamber is available. And I would appreciate it if that could be looked into. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Morley?
Yes, I think my personal opinion is that our democratic requirements are best served by having the meeting in this chamber, where it is live streamed to every one of our residents, and relying on some of our residents being able to get to obscure, out of the way places in our own villages will cause them greater inconvenience than being able to watch it from the safety and comfort of their own homes.
Councillor Carter?
Say that we are forgetting the elderly and the people who do not have access to internet. who may not wish to have that and who may want to participate and take part in their local community, and also going out to a meeting may be beneficial, especially with somebody who's lonely.
Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just point out that these seem to be obscure and out-of-the-way places when we want to meet in them, but when people want to build 300 houses in them, they're all of a sudden very well connected and on a transport corridor, easy to get to.
Very good point. Councillor Stringer.
I really can't follow that. That was superb. Well done. I don't want to take exception to calling Stone Marketplace that obscure and out of the way. Come on. They are us. They are of us and we are of them. I really have problems with this. We've had constrictions on the amount of time we can ask questions of the administration. It is our duty as an alternative administration to try and hold that administration to account. If this is agreed, we'll have an hour and a half a year to do that. I frankly don't think that's long enough.
Mansell.
I'm sorry, I thought we were still in questions, so I might have missed my chance if we were in debate. Now, are we in debate or are we in questions? Am I allowed to mention anything about debate, or am I only allowed to question?
No, we're totally in debate.
Right, we're in debate, right? So, well, I'm sorry, but I cannot support this this paper. As has already been said, there was no reason given in the paper to start with. I agree entirely with my neighbour here, Councillor Stringer, that removing the few opportunities that we have to have a debate, I think, is detrimental to our communities. And I'm sorry, I think it is incredibly disingenuous to say that sorting out dates less than 6 months in advance is that council dates are placed well in advance into member and officer diaries. 6 months is not well in advance in my book. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this. It goes against my beliefs about democracy and the ability to debate, and I will not be supporting this motion.
Okay, let's go to debate because the car park shuts in 20 minutes. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? No. That is passed. So last one, item 15, council appointments. I would like to move the changes listed in the table papers. Are there any further changes? Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Eburn? So all those in favour? Sorry, Matthew. I don't want to stifle debate. Any questions? Any debate? No, brilliant. All those in favour? Excellent, that is passed. That is over. We will meet again on Thursday the 23rd of April at 5:30. Thanks very much. Good night.